I am Dr. Patrice Berry, licensed clinical psychologist, and here I share legal and entertainment news from a psychological perspective. Y'all, buckle up, get ready for this one. Jessy Kurczewski. So, if you have heard of this case, she's also sometimes referred to as the eye drop murderer because she was found guilty of unaliving her friend who was supposed to be her friend. She was the caregiver for her, and her family had known her for a while. And the statements by Jesse's mom, and then also the long statement by Jesse. I think it's somewhere around an hour and 45 minutes. It's almost 2 hours long. Jesse just gives this. You would think she was giving a victim impact statement because she really vilified the victim in this case, in my opinion. It seemed like she tried to make Lynn sound like this person who was using substances and had all of these issues, had all of these mental health problems. And if anyone had just listened to Jesse, and Jesse has changed her story multiple times. And I'm going to pause at times so that we can make note of that. But I want to start with this what a little bit of what the state is going to say, and then I'm going to pause, explain a little bit. I'm going to play a little bit of the mom. We're going to talk about that, and then we'll play some of Jesse and then the judge's sentencing as well. Judge Duro, like, my hat's off to her because to me she is such an unbiased person. I could not be in her shoes. Jesse could not have wasted almost 2 hours of my life and I like not give her life in prison. Like just not, but like just I don't know, like to me Judge Duro was so calm and so like she didn't let any of this sway her in my opinion. Like she just seemed to be so level-headed, and I think that's why she took a 90-minute break after Jesse said all the stuff that she said. And Judge Duro is even going to quote Jesse at times. And so I will be like highlighting comments in the chat. Judge Duro, because so I think I first saw her with the Daryl Brooks case. And to me, she gave him too much rope. Like she just kept giving him a chance, giving him a chance, giving him a chance. I think just to show that she wasn't biased or that the fact that he wasn't in the courtroom, she kept giving him chances, and she gave him way more chances than I would have because his behavior was just consistently manipulatively erratic, not erratic like you couldn't see it coming. It was more like he would say, I want to go to the other room. And she would be like, well, let's just try to see if you can stay. And then he would engage in behaviors that would have him kicked out into the other room. And so it was like the speech was a little long for me. Like it was okay, but I was glad that she said all the things that she said. And to me, I think she's upheld a phenomenal record. Jesse is going to try to appeal this. And for anyone that thinks that Lynn might have unalived herself, I want to go through some of what Judge Duro says because I really agree with the judge in this scenario. In this scenario, like, oh my gosh, the Daryl Brooks case, I don't know that I did any videos on him. I might have done one. I don't know how many I did. That was before I started doing as many. So Judge Duro, she is beautiful. Like she is a beautiful woman. She is. Like her hair, her makeup, like she's always on point. All right. So let's go on ahead and start with this.
Good morning, everyone. We are here today for sentencing following the nearly 3-week plus trial that we had last year.
Okay, for anyone that doesn't know anything about this case, so Jessy Kurczewski, the defendant in this case, she was found guilty of unaliving her friend Lynn and also for stealing Lynn's money. Like that's what happened. And there were all of these letters. I linked my full video where I go into more of the details, and Jesse's letters. I link that in the description.
Year, has the state complied with victim rights in terms of today's hearing?
Yes, Your Honor, absolutely. And many of them are here today with us, certainly Anthony Poza, and will be making a statement to the court.
All right. And the state's prepared for sentencing?
Yes, we are, Your Honor.
And Attorney Jones, you and your client are prepared for sentencing?
We are, Judge. Thank you.
We know that the court obviously had ordered a pre-sentence investigation following the trial attorneys being allowed to withdraw. I've read through that. There was a private PSI that was also submitted. I've reviewed that as well. Ms. Kurczewski submitted a letter in December of last year that I had indicated when it came in, I would review that as part of the sentencing material. So I've reviewed that as well, reviewed my notes from the trial, and otherwise just look through the electronic file that I have as well. And there was one letter also filed by Attorney Jones that I've seen as well. So I don't think I've missed anything. I will mention, obviously, I have the materials that were provided by the state at the end of November of last year that I've reviewed as well. And I trust the state will provide any updates regarding that. And we'll go from there. Anything either party thinks I've overlooked in terms of what has been submitted to the court from the state?
Nothing about the item submitted. Logistically, we do have some.
So the state is going to ask that Jessy not be able to profit from this crime at all. And correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like Judge Duro did not limit that, but instead set her restitution very high. So Jessy could potentially write a book or participate in some type of movie or anything like that. But I think it's like 400,000. Like, it's a lot of restitution that Jessy has to pay, so that any money she made would be held in escrow to pay back victims first.
Some photographs that the victim's family brought that I would like to present, and I just want to know logistically with the cameras where that might.
I'm going to fast forward past that part to get to the first victim statement. All right. I'm just going to fast forward past all of this, because we have a lot to cover today. We have so much. Okay, let's see if we're here.
I'm asking as part of this sentence that the court order under 949.165 that Ms. Kurczewski not be allowed to profit from any interviews or book deals or movie deals or things of that nature, and that any money contracted with her for such things go into an escrow account with the Department of Correction to go towards any financial responsibility she bears in this case. The second issue is, and I've just turned this over to Attorney Jones today, the state did just receive an invoice for our expert witness from NMS Labs. That bill is for $16,728.74. The state is asking that Ms. Kurczewski be responsible for that as well under 973.06 sub 1 sub B. And I know I'll deal with the more specific restitution somewhat separately from sentencing, but regardless of what's ordered against Ms. Kurczewski, those are the state's requests as it pertains to her financial responsibility.
Thank you.
Your Honor, from there, I just want to tell the court, and I know you already know this, but today is about Lynn Herman. Ms. Kurczewski had her day, actually multiple days in court. And today we get to turn to focus on what this really is about, and that's Ms. Herman. And to begin with, then I want to invite Anthony Poza and Jim Kelleher to talk to the court and really let you know who Lynn Herman was to them. So I'm going to have them start off our presentation.
All right.
So this first statement is going to be a little spicy. He's going to tell Jessy where she can go, and so just be prepared that this first one is a little spicy. Okay.
We'll provide a microphone if you
fast
want to
forward.
stay, make sure it's working. Just to first of all state your first and last name for the record.
My name's James Kelleher,
Thank you.
JamesKelliher.
All right, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Honor. First, I would start by like to thank the jury for reaching the right decision in this case. It was a very tragic case, and Lynn deserved that outcome. I would also like to thank all the law enforcement, detectives, local police, and all the attorneys for all their hard work, and everybody that helped with this tragic case over the years. Thank you. I would also like to thank you, Judge Doro, for getting this case moving and keeping it moving. Thank you, Your Honor. One last thing we'd like to know is where's Lynn's ashes at? We would like Lynn back. Nobody seems to know where Lynn's ashes or remains are. So we've been looking for those, and we would like those back so we can give Lynn a decent burial. Your Honor, excuse me. Excuse me 1 second. Can't see without my glasses. Your Honor, Jessy cruelly murdered my friend Lynn Hernan. I would like the court to sentence Jessy to life in prison with no chance of parole ever. If Wisconsin had the death penalty, I would be asking you for that. Your Honor, Lynn was a kind, caring, giving person. She had a heart of gold. She would help anyone at any time. Lynn was a real sweetheart. She had the looks. She was a very beautiful lady. She had the grace and style. She was a real class act. She loved the outdoors, the sunshine, the beaches, going out on the lakes, the wave runners, or on the pontoon boat. She was also a great cook, and anyone that knew her loved her cooking and her baking. She was also an awesome beautician. Lynn was a lady that always had to look her best, and she always wanted her customers to look their best also. Lynn was also an animal lover. She had a few cats and dogs over the years, and we believe that Jessy also had those put to sleep. I believe Jessy is pure evil. Your Honor, Lynn did nothing wrong. She inherited money from her parents so that she had money to live on or live out the rest of her life. But Jessy had other plans. She looked up online on how to kill somebody and not get caught. I believe Jessy started poisoning Lynn in 2016 and stealing Lynn's money and her property. Jessy poisoned Lynn like she was a rodent. Lynn was not a junkie or a coward. That would be Jessy. She continued to poison Lynn until she passed away October 3rd, 2018. The pain that Lynn must have been in for years. Jessy's pure evil. The devil lives inside her. She tried to steal Lynn's identity, which could never happen for the simple fact she's too damn ugly, inside and out.
Spicy.
She's the worst of humanity. She's a useless human being. She's a known liar. She's a thief. And now she's a convicted murderer. Jessy, when you get to your new home, I hope you are taken advantage of and treated the way you treated Lynn and passed around like a used piece of meat. Life in prison without parole is the least of your worries. To cheat a woman in women's prison is going to feel like a holiday inn compared to where you are headed. The devil awaits you. I hope you rot in hell. Lynn Hernan is an angel in heaven. May you rest in peace, Lynn. You're dearly missed and always will be. I'm so very sorry. God bless.
Thank you.
He held nothing back, absolutely nothing back. I think the other ones are, because I think there's one other victim that's going to give a statement. And so I do want to play that because so much of this is going to be Jessy's mom, and then Jessy, and then the judge. Like that's going to be a lot of what we're playing today.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Dear Jessy, we write this letter with the hope you are in a state of reflection and introspection. We write to you under circumstances neither of us could have imagined, circumstances that have altered the course of all of our lives in profound and irreversible ways. We want to start by expressing the depth of the pain and loss we have experienced since the tragic events that unfolded. The void left by the absence of Auntie Linny, our close friend, is immense and unfathomable. Her laughter.
So really quick, I just wanted to say, I don't think the other guy, so I just wanted to give y'all a heads up that his statement was going to be spicy. So that was the heads up. I don't think he's going to have any regrets about anything that he said. And this probably is true to his personality. He's probably a pretty blunt person, and he said exactly what he wanted to say. Let's continue. I believe this is I think this is Lynn's nephew.
Her kindness, her presence, these are now memories we cling to amidst the darkness of grief. The pain of Lynn's absence is not solely ours to bear. It echoes through the lives of her friends and all those who were touched by her warmth and generosity throughout her life, whether it be during the holidays or on a random afternoon or evening for an appetizer and drink. We are not writing out of vengeance, but rather out of the need for understanding, closure, and perhaps even healing. I implore you to acknowledge the gravity of your actions and the irreparable harm that you have inflicted upon so many lives. Incarceration offers an opportunity for reflection, redemption, and rehabilitation. I urge you to use this opportunity to confront the demons that led you down this dark path and to emerge from this ordeal as a better, more compassionate human being. We also want to take this opportunity to share with you the humanity of Auntie Linny. She was more than just a statistic, more than just a name in a news headline. She was a beloved friend, a cherished family member, a bright light extinguished far too soon. These are the most important things to be remembered about somebody who is deeply loved by many and taken out due to selfish greed. As you serve your sentence, I hope you reflect on the impact of your actions and find the strength to atone for them and stop your life of deceit and lies. I hope you know your charade is up and that you will never fool anyone again. In closing, we want to express sincere hope for healing for myself, my mom, my dad, Keith and Diana, Jim, and for all of Lynn's loved ones, and even for you, as I do know Lynn never knew it would be someone who became so close to her that would slay her. May we all find the courage to confront our pain, the wisdom to seek forgiveness, and the compassion to embrace the possibility of redemption, with hope for a better tomorrow, the Poses and family.
And for the record, that was Anthony Posa.
Thank you, and thank you to Jim and Anthony for those statements. Your Honor, I want to start out by saying that when the state's team approached what we'd be asking for, and certainly a number of people asked us, what's the issue at sentencing? It's a life sentence. And of course, as this court knows, the biggest decision Your Honor has is whether Ms. Kurczewski ever gets the chance at parole. And I would think as a judge, you'd have to evaluate that by really trying to look into the future and trying to see any redeemable qualities a person might have. And I think as I go through my sentencing remarks, you will see that Ms. Kurczewski has demonstrated really that she has none, and that she's only a future risk to the whole community if she's given another chance to victimize people. She will do it. So I want to start out by Ms. Kurczewski's background prior to even coming into custody on this case. And it goes back to February of 2010, where she was charged and ultimately convicted for what's commonly referred to as ID theft. Certainly some of these came in at trial briefly, but not all of her prior crimes. And in February of 2010, Ms. Kurczewski was working at a health clinic when several patients of that health clinic were contacted by their financial institutions to be informed that loans were being applied for in their name with their personal information. And it came to bear that Ms. Kurczewski was using her position as a receptionist at that health clinic to steal these individuals' information and apply for 8 different loans, 2 of which were honored in the total amount of $4,000. When she was caught and arrested, she did say that she did this because she wanted to pay her rent and had been out of work for 6 months. And this will become a theme of Ms. Kurczewski, that instead of working harder or getting a better paying job, she finds ways to steal and con people out of their own money or money that isn't even with them yet when she applies for loans in their name. For that conviction, along with several others that she was sentenced for at the same time, she received 1 year of initial confinement and 3 years of extended supervision. While that case was pending, between March and April of 2010, so the consecutive months, there was conduct that was never charged but used as a read-in offense in the Milwaukee courts, where she was again taking out payday loans in other people's name. Over those 2 months, she did it to the tune of $12,502. Again, that, similar to what we saw in this trial, involved essentially a shell game using different vehicles and using those as leverage to obtain title loans from title loan companies. In fact, as of April 2010, the Milwaukee Sheriff's Department reports indicated that payday loan was reported to be owed $22,343 in fraudulent loans that Ms. Kurczewski had taken out with them. Then in July of 2010, in a case that was charged and was brought up briefly in this trial, the defendant used her own mother's identification to try and obtain a loan from Payday Loans. Workers there recognized Ms. Kurczewski almost immediately due to her past conduct over the previous months. They sort of delayed her and contacted police while Ms. Kurczewski sort of waited for this loan to process. When the police came and confronted Ms. Kurczewski, as became another theme throughout this trial, when she realizes she's in trouble, she tells just lies, bold, nonsensical lies. And so at age 26, she tried to convince the officers who were speaking with her that she was her 46-year-old mother. She was able to produce a driver's license, a social security card, and even her own mother's checkbook to try and substantiate. The police, with good common sense, did not believe her, told her that the Payday Loan store people recognized her as somebody who would rip them off, at which time Ms. Kurczewski just tried to leave. And then when not allowed to leave, again, changed her story, lied, and now tried saying she had the permission of her mother. In that case, when police went to talk to the defendant's mother to see if that was true, the mother at that time stated that it was not true and that this is what Ms. Kurczewski does, and she was ruining the family's lives with her fraudulent ways. Then, in September of 2010, she was now charged with forgery along with multiple counts of felony bail jumping. There, after stealing from her mother, she went to live with a friend in a upper-lower duplex, as I understand it, where the friend's mother lived downstairs. Well, the mother and Ms. Kurczewski's friend were off working. Ms. Kurczewski, who was not working, helped herself to the victims, that being her friend's mother, her driver's license, social security card, and a copy of that individual's We Energies bill. Pretended to be that victim when calling the financial institution to add herself to that victim's account, and tried to obtain loans there as well. She was sentenced for that offense as well to 1 year of initial confinement and 3 years extended supervision. In yet another case of forgery in October of 2010, after she had now been kicked out of her mother's house and kicked out of her friend's house after stealing from them, she was staying at the Mainstay Suites in Oak Creek and was found to have been passing bad checks to pay for her rent there. Again, when she was convicted of that forgery, one additional fact, when she was made to wait in the lobby to talk to police about passing a bad, what purported to be a certified cashier's check, another fraudulent document, she identified herself as her mother again. And then finally, when police said there was no way that was possible, she did not look 46 years old, she now admits she lied and knew that she had 3 warrants for arrest on the previous cases at the time. When she was convicted of that, she was given 1 year of initial confinement and 3 years extended supervision consecutive, for a total in January of 2011, when she was sentenced to 2 years of initial confinement and 6 years extended supervision. She served her confinement time until release on extended supervision on October 9th of 2012. By November of 2013, she was placed on a hold in relation to a first offense OWI conviction of hers. That hold, went till November 25th, 2013. And then a few short weeks later, on December 9th, 2013, she was again placed on a hold for a fraud offense. That hold lasted until March 27th of 2014, at which time she was formally revoked and was officially sent back to prison until February 23rd of 2016. So really about 26 months of time there. That February 23rd, 2016 release date is crucial to this case because really only months after her release from prison for a number of financial crimes where she simply did not care who she affected, whose lives she ruined or at least inconvenienced, she started this very sinister plot. And I think that's the absolute appropriate word for it. Remember what those closest to Lynn Hernan said at trial, that in summer of 2016 is when they started noticing Lynn Hernan becoming sick. Yes, a lot was made about certain back problems going back to the 90s and perhaps other health problems related to just natural aging process, but something in 2016 was different to those closest. She was going to the doctor, going to the hospitals for stomach issues, and we went through a great many medical records. And the very consistent thing was that the doctors couldn't figure out what was happening to her. And I'm not here to argue beyond a reasonable doubt that the poisoning started back in 2016.
All right. And so really great question. So here, how did she get this way? Who did she learn this behavior from? Now, she does not have a formal record from adolescent. Like she doesn't have a juvie history. She doesn't have, because normally with a case like this, you might have seen some behaviors in, especially by high school around, because sometimes before you normally see signs of psychopathic type behavior like before the age of 12. Now, some kids have those behaviors and then they get treatment, or that doesn't mean that they're going to have them as an adult. But individuals like this, you normally see something early on. I would I would bet that she likely has a history of pathological lying, just lying about anything. And that probably goes back early on. And then it just kept getting worse and worse. And I think in this case, she didn't want to get caught. And the judge is specifically going to say the fact that Lynn went to the hospital and nobody seemed to catch that she had the substance from Visine that was causing her to be sick. Nobody seemed to catch that she kind of thought she might get away with it. Now, and I think she changed Lynn's will, and that's gonna come up by the judge as well. And so, like, I don't know that she seems to care about people based on what they can do for her, or but then because her ex-boyfriend who like she was around his kids, like she would buy gifts for his kids. The mother of those children, she offered to fly, Jesse offered to fly the mother of her boyfriend's children like out to, because I think she had a child studying abroad in Taiwan or something. She offered to pay for it. Like she just started doling out money. If people went out, she would kind of pay for everybody's stuff. And she was also gambling and doing stuff like that. But it seems like she wanted to live this extravagant lifestyle without actually having to work from it. Those are my thoughts. That's my opinion. And I have seen this I see it with kids and adolescents where they kind of want to buy people. They kind of want to buy love. Do you remember that movie, Can't Buy Me Love? I remember that movie. But and they did a remake of it. I remember the original, and I also saw the remake too. You just can't, like, that relationship ends up being so superficial because the ex-boyfriend showed up to testify against her. It's my understanding that he was one of the witnesses that testified, so he never met Lynn, and he testified to Jesse's spending and all of that while he was with her. And so just from where I'm sitting, so I can't do a psychological evaluation of her, I definitely see narcissistic and psychopathic traits, so antisocial traits. Those are some of the traits. If I was to do some type, or if she was assessed, I would venture to guess that those types of traits would be there. Her statement, her almost 2 hour statement oh my gosh, like it is just, like it is, oh my gosh, like it is very, very tough to watch. And so I'm glad other people saw that movie too. All right, we're gonna keep going.
Well, what I know happened in 2016 was Ms. Kurczewski started getting checks in very large quantities that were outside Ms. Hernan's normal pattern. You saw that Anthony Posa, for his graduation, got a check from Lynn for $200. And that was pretty large sum for Lynn Hernan to write out to people. And yet at the same time, Ms. Kurczewski is receiving checks for $2,000, and it goes on to be $10,000, $13,000, multiple times. And that all started in the middle of 2016. Additionally, in 2016 is when those closest to Lynn Hernan felt like she was becoming more distant. And I think this court has seen enough cases where that's a pattern of con artists, of diabolical people, to try and separate their target from people who might step in and say, something's off here. Somebody who might step in and say, Lynn, where is all your money going? Let's check it out. Somebody who might say, who is this Jessy Kurczewski woman who's all of a sudden in your life, answering your phone, telling us things? And that's what Ms. Kurczewski did here. When we talk about the theft, it went on between mid-2016 all the way up until the date of death. And I think it's absolutely an aggravated theft, as aggravated as it gets. Not just because of the amount taken, tens of thousands of dollars, not just because the duration it went on for, but it was undeniably Ms. Kurczewski's biggest motive to kill Lynn Hernan. There were two real motives that I can see, both born out of complete greed. A, Ms. Kurczewski knew that prison awaited for her if she was caught. She had been to prison before for these exact same offenses. She didn't want to go back to prison. And B, and the real cold-hearted motive here, is that Lynn Hernan was out of money. Ms. Kurczewski had taken it all. She had maxed out those credit cards. She had used up the $250,000 that Lynn Hernan was worth upon Ms. Kurczewski's release date from prison in February of 2016. And Lynn Hernan was simply of no value, unfortunately, to Ms. Kurczewski anymore, except if Ms. Hernan was dead. Because as Ms. Kurczewski showed us, the very next day, she's going into that bank lockbox, taking whatever was in there. She knows she's the PR of the estate, and what does she do, Judge? She continues stealing tens of thousands of dollars. This was absolutely a premeditated crime, and we know that because in May of 2018, Ms. Kurczewski is telling those closest to her, her boyfriend, her live-in boyfriend, Scott Craig, that Lynn is in a coma at Freighter Hospital and she's probably going to die. Ms. Kurczewski had already set the stage for what she was going to do. In July of 2018, we know she's downloading PDF files to her phone. Criminal Poisoning was the title of one. There's 3 separate PDFs downloaded, all dealing with cyanide. There's one PDF entitled Have an Exit Strategy, Chemical Suicides, and another simply titled Household Poisons. We know these were being accessed by Ms. Kurczewski in July of 2018. We also know that she deleted those in February of 2019, after the medical examiner's office told her they were not allowed to give her any more information about Lynn Hernan's cause of death, when she starts to see the walls closing in around her. We had to recover those. They were deleted, but nevertheless accessed on her phone 3 months before Lynn Hernan's murder. Again, even when Ms. Hernan was in the hospital and we heard Jim Kelleher's calling her, trying to make plans, Ms. Hernan didn't answer her phone. Ms. Kurczewski answered her phone and told Jim Kelleher that his longtime friend did not like him anymore and he should stop calling, never call her again. Again, attempts to isolate even a week before her murder. So the theft in Lynn Hernan's life is absolutely as aggravated as it could possibly be, Your Honor. And we would ask for a maximum sentence there of 5 years initial confinement.
All right. And so he is going to go into more details of all of this. They are also, if you haven't seen this, they are going to show one of the inmates. They're going to show how some papers. So Jessy is going to say that this is not the letter that was mailed, that it's not the same envelope. Like Jesse's going to, it appears to be that she was lying. Like that it's because she's going to say she sent those letters to her lawyer or whatever she sent to her lawyer, that's who it was going to. But it seems like this is what was in the outgoing mail. And so they play the recording from the jail of that part. I'm going to skip that part. We are going to get to so Kathleen McClay, yes. So I'll play she gives a statement on Jesse's behalf, and this is kind of what a statement for the defendant should kind of look like. So I will play this, because then the mom is just going to go completely to the left, okay? And the judge is going to give mom a chance to say something about her daughter's character, and mom just isn't going to do it. And so
Names for the record.
My name is Kathleen McCarthy, Kathleen MC, capital Carthy.
Thank you for being here. What would you like me to know?
Honorable Judge Dora and court members. My name is Kathleen McCarthy, and I'm a very close friend of Jesse's. We met 2 years ago when I was sentenced to 4.5 months at WCJ at the age of 70 years old. 1 week in, I was placed in Pod 3 and was quickly informed about some of the inmates. And first was Jessy. She was known as the Visine killer and was awaiting her murder trial. Somewhat scared, I watched a lot and saw that some inmates treated her as a human being and others as a disease. Not very nice. Jessy pretty much kept to herself, feeling like a leopard and really not knowing how the jail works, especially at my age. Jessy approached me and asked if I'd like to sit at her table, share meals with her, play cards. I accepted. Throughout the next 4.5 months, we ate together, played cards together, prayed together. She and I became almost like mother and daughter. Well, it was more like grandma, granddaughter. And between our many hours of conversations consisting of politics, religion, our family, pets, friends, her case, her prior bad acts, and likes and dislikes, I got to know the
notice this is the only friend that's speaking on Jesse's behalf. I believe this friend that she met in jail and her mom are the only two people that are going to speak to for Jessy from what I've seen. I don't know what letters were submitted. I agree with the chat that I don't know if, and I don't think it was this individual. I think it was somebody else who she got to give the papers to, like, to move the papers for her, and Jessy like put the papers on her bed and walked away, and the person came back to the papers, and then like Jessy never gave the person the papers directly. Like Jessy, like it seemed sneaky to me. Like that's just from where I am. It seemed kind of sneaky. Uh and okay. We're gonna let her keep going. And I don't think Jessy is all bad. So like she does have some positive qualities, and that's what the judge is going to talk about as well. There was a great question, and I can answer this now too. I started because I wanted to make sure. How much of the lack of empathy is genetic versus your environment and kind of what you've been through? And we're still studying that. The best way to study it is twin studies, where twins are raised separately, like in two different households, or So there can be a genetic component to psychopath type behavior, but there are ways a person that is against societal norms and that maybe has a character kind of like Jesse, if you teach them how to use that in a pro-social way. So if Jesse had maybe learned how to hack for good, be like an ethical hacker, or like if you learn how to use it in a positive way. So I can be a little oppositional. I like to do things that break the norm. I do have a lot of empathy. I do have compassion and all of those things. And so I do have family members that have been incarcerated, but we also know that incarceration can sometimes be related to really to reading ability, to ability to get a job, and to a bunch of other stuff. And so we know what interventions can help. You really need to intervene around elementary school, and that can be helpful to help put somebody on a better path down the road. So there is no set thing where everybody says, okay, all people that do like this, they all have this history. Like there isn't anything like that, but there are some things that make it worse. It does to me, I don't think her mom holds her accountable. I don't know if her mom would have done and said anything to have her daughter not go away for life. Like, I think her mom really wanted to try to save her daughter. Maybe the mom truly believes that she didn't do those things, but does she have her mom that fooled? I don't know. The other name that comes up for me is Jody Hildebrandt as well. I remember Jesse talking about how if Jody told you the sky was purple, you would believe it. And Jesse K in this case, she might have had a way to get people on her side until you kind of stepped back and looked at everything. I'll let this keep going.
The real Jessy. She is a caring, giving person. Many women who come in and go out of that pod have nothing, no family, no money, no friends to help and support them. The food in the jail is absolutely horrible, and I didn't eat much of it at all. Thank God I have a family that cared and could help me out with eye cares and money on my account. The people with nothing were recipients of gifts from Jesse, every last one of them. It was from sometimes body wash, combs, cups, ramen noodles from an eye care, paper, pens, use of the phone of her money to call their loved ones and their kids. After watching her do that, I in turn helped. Well, she and I did this continuously for the time I was there, and she continues to do it today. She also plays peacemaker, if she can, with 25 to 30 women in one area, and you saw how small that area is. The dynamics in there is not always conducive to peace and harmony. I know she had to calm me down on more than one occasion. I truly have never lived like that, nor been treated like that ever. Jessy has been through all of this and still helps people survive and keep them from losing their mind. Well, while there, Jessy started a nightly devotion before bed. She starts with something from the daily bread, a Bible reading, or something she was given by the people who hold the Sunday services and prayer groups she attends weekly. These nightly devotions are still being done every night as of today. Throughout Jessy's time here, she has worked tediously and tirelessly reading over and trying to
can't take any more of this. I'm sorry.
Flower, Flower.
Okay, prepare yourself. This is gonna get, because she's gonna read one of Lynn's supposed letters. And to me, this writing sounds more the way Jessy speaks. And I don't know Lynn. I don't know, but Jessy and her mom seem to speak this way. This doesn't seem this I don't it's I'm just gonna play it and we'll pause and talk.
I'm Jesse's mother. Um, I have a letter I have 2 letters I would like to read that were written from Lynn. And then I have some things to add to that. Jenny, I don't know how to begin this. I know you are going to have the hardest time when I am gone. You were my rock, when my mom passed. You have no idea.
Okay, so I can't take that part either because she's gonna because this is where they're gonna try to say that Lynn unalived herself and that she was involved in so that Lynn poisoned her own mother with Visine, which that there's no proof or evidence of that at all, at all. And none of this came out until Jessy was backed in a corner. And that's when the lies kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And that's what the evidence has shown. So that's why I feel comfortable saying that. Let's see where this is and see if I need to fast forward a little bit more.
And to what I should have done sooner. I did not write it myself because clearly it looks like blank, like me.
Okay, keep
Parentheses,
going.
I had just help and checking herself out of the hospital or refusing to let ambulance take her to the hospital. Lynn was very stubborn. You could not make her do anything that she didn't want to do. The doctors couldn't even help her. The doctors
Okay, so we're at the point where the mom is talking about her friend, but to me, like, it's oh my gosh, to even call her still a friend. And I saw in the chat, and I don't know that Jesse's mom might have Lynn's car. Like, I just, ugh.
refused to see her anymore because she couldn't pass her PDMP, which is prescription drug monitoring program. The doctor felt his license was in jeopardy. When Lynn was in need of help or wanted to talk, why is it she only contacted Jessy, Jean, or I? Lynn was also.
I wonder if Jessy wrote this. Like this so sounds like the way Jessy talks. Like Jessy says stuff like, "So why didn't this happen?" Like that's the way, and I don't know if that's how mom talks naturally. Mom is reading something. And I don't know, but what mom is saying sounds a lot like how Jessy talks, and maybe mom just talks this way too, but that was the thought that ran through my head as I was listening to mom say this stuff.
So listed us as contacts for disability, hospital, or in case of emergencies. I didn't find it interesting that the victim and his family were at trial every day, but the victim's family member stated on stand that she clearly was unaware that Lynn was on disability and had state aid health insurance. It was stated that she had no insurance and figured Lynn just wasn't going to seek help for that reason. They clearly were unaware how many times she had been to the doctor or hospital, or that she had just checked herself had been in the hospital and checked herself out right before her death. They didn't even know of her death until we called them. Well, I have come to the realization you cannot help someone who doesn't help themselves. You can only be there for them. I did realize loneliness leads to isolation, depression, heart issues, and death. There are also 3 lifestyles we all.
The isolation that Jessy likely caused. I could see Jessy like so in psychology we sometimes call it creating a triangle where like I try to turn my friend against somebody else, but it cuts them off from that other person, where it's like it's me and you against that person. I could see Jessy isolating Lynn from other people.
We all have public, private, and very secretive. Lynn and I had many conversations at great lengths about her current life status and how she was feeling. I do believe she had a part to play in her mother's death, and I do believe in our many conversations this was something she was feeling very responsible for and couldn't live with anymore. Lynn did explain in her letters before her death.
No.
I always asked her why she was so down and depressed. Her
No.
parents lived good lives and
No.
passed away at an old age. She was an only child and was inheriting her house, the parents' house. She could feel a bit of financial relief and a new start. She could finally relax a bit. Her depression just got worse. The state went into one direction, and that's what they stayed with. Instead of looking into Lynn's past and her own demons, the state got it wrong. Also, John Fryatt, Lynn's cousin, he was not close
Jessy
with
wrote
Lynn,
this.
nor did she have a relationship with him.
I don't know that. for
Lynn
sure.
was close with John's mother, Aunt June, and lived with her after prison. Lynn did not want us to notify John upon her death. It was given, she gave us specific instructions in her letters. So I don't know why any of this, he had any involvement in this case, nor had he ever met my daughter or I, which I find funny because I had met Aunt June many times
Which I find
and
funny.
had been out to her
Jessy says that
house
all the
when
time.
visiting Lynn. I also had been out to the boathouse in Beulah that she owned back in the day on many occasions with Lynn. But he thought we were strangers upon listening to discovery interrogations. I am no biker, nor was I ever, nor was I into drugs, or was I ever, nor is my daughter, or was she ever. So
None of
they
this
got that
matters.
wrong. Lynn, Jessy, and I were not mere acquaintances that Lynn just met and Jessy began caring for. We were family, for the record. So
Oh, yeah.
please, let's get that straight. Lynn wouldn't have let
So let me, so right now, so I'm sorry. So for this part that we've been listening to, because I skipped over the supposed letter part. I couldn't take that. So about at the part where she starts, where the letter allegedly says that Lynn, I don't know, something about her parents or something. I skipped that part. And this is now mom's statement. But mom is reading a statement. And to me, what mom is reading sounds more like how Jessy talks. And versus, I don't like this. And maybe if they both talk this way, I can totally be wrong. To me, this sounds like what Jessy would want to say. And she makes a lot of the same points in the hour and 45 minutes. We are not going to make it through all of hers. Like we just can't. But these just, so these are supposed to be mom's words, but and I'm just trying to have the judge try to give mom an opportunity to say something about her daughter, cuz she's just talking about Lynn and how, like, I don't, but like she's not saying anything about her daughter being sentenced. Your daughter was found guilty. She's going to be sentenced. Tell me why I shouldn't give her life in prison.
listed us on emergency contacts, accounts, various documents if she didn't want us on. So please, let's not go there anymore. Her new will was not fabricated or made up. She had changed it for her own various reasons, being no longer had she seen this individual anymore and not being in her life. I didn't state that. She did. Nor did I or my daughter ask to be any part of this, nor do we want to be. There is one thing I am sure of. Jessy did not kill Lynn, nor would she have taken her life. Someone she loved and cared for so much. As Lynn felt the same for her, these
She
two
wanted
had a
to honor.
bond like no other. I think they were closer than I was with either one of them. Jessy would spend many nights with Lynn as I
This is your daughter that gave your name when she was doing crimes. She gave your name when she was doing crimes. I'm so glad I let that part play. I wasn't aware of all of her history. I'm gonna try to get through it. Try.
worked third shift when she was younger. Lynn would plan slumber parties for Jessy and her girlfriends, makeup parties. We would regularly have movie nights. Lynn and Jessy would make all sorts of hors d'oeuvres, snacks. We had a pool in our apartments, and Lynn and I were neighbors. We would spend many days and nights at the pool, cookouts. We would pack up our car with snacks and all go looking at Christmas lights around the holidays. When she was younger. Lynn would also accompany Jessy on school field trips. At times, she'd bring snacks for all the kids. She was like the den mother. As Jessy was getting older, teen years, Lynn would also do many things with her. without my knowledge or consent that I definitely would not have consented to.
So what was that part was weird for me. So without my knowledge or consent that I definitely wouldn't have consented to, mom does not explain. What was that about? Chat, I need somebody to help me. Like without my knowledge or consent, I definitely wouldn't have like that was a weird statement for me. Like were they doing substances together or cuz I think they're going to say that Lynn had like was a scam artist and she was stealing money from people. Like that's what they say in part of this. According to Jesse, okay. Oh, okay. Okay. Is that are okay. But if I had a daughter and my daughter needed that, I would take her to the doctor and we would get it. But I know everybody has different feelings about that. Wow. But that was odd to me, especially in your daughter's sentencing. Like they keep they're this is Darvo at its finest. We've talked about Darvo so much, but they are like flipping this and making Lynn the bad one and Jesse is the poor victim. And nobody believes it. Nobody. If I was the judge, this would have made me mad. And I don't know. Like I'm not a judge. I'm not a judge. This would not have helped anything.
I do not like the fact that detectives and state have tried every angle to implicate myself in this matter,
They did.
whether it be handwritings or whatever. When I had not been to Lynn's house since July, the last time I saw her or talked to her was in the hospital before she died. I had called many times and spoke with the nurses about her condition. It utterly disgusts me and saddens me that my family's name, credibility, have been tarnished so badly. My daughter and I have been there for her and helped Lynn through so many situations. You have no idea. There was a gag order put on my daughter, the state detectives, and so-called friends and family members who she had no relationship with, suddenly decided to speak out to any and all news media outlets that they possibly could. The detectives came to my place of employment, tried to interrogate me while they were with a warrant at my house, turning everything upside down where I had lived. Where
That's what happened.
where I had a roommate and her son that I was living with. Not to mention, almost 1 year after Lynn's death, I had already moved out of the old residence. And for what exactly did you think you were going to find there? I don't know. Come to find out, old residence that I had lived at prior for over 30 years is where I met Lynn, would not renew my lease after I had been there for that long. I can't imagine why detectives went there and talked to them. I have since relocated
Okay.
a few times and have no longer been working. At one point, I actually lived in my car for a couple weeks. They have taken my every reason for living, other than I know God. He doesn't ask us to take of our own lives. Life as I see it will never be the same. We have been called murderers to cat killers. When I had 6 of my own daughters, okay, and I took Lynn's 2 in, so they're not murdered and they weren't.
Please keep looking forward, please.
Cats. They didn't deserve this, and I couldn't leave them with strangers. This isn't the first time Lynn has left her animals for others to care for or pack up her apartment. Again, I didn't see any other friends or family they're offering to help out with this or much else. As for my daughter's past, it has been brought to light on trial, and we are all aware.
But I think Jesse is feeling supported by all of this because she's over here crying. And I'm like, if I would be appalled if for some reason I was the defendant and somebody's supposed to be speaking on my behalf and this is what they're saying. I'm gonna be like, talk about talk about how awesome of a person and how I learned from my mistakes and I show so much remorse. Like I'm never gonna do it again. Like say those kinds of things. Do not start blaming the victim.
She has a gambling problem. Lynn's past was not to be brought up, but with suicide letters given to jurors,
Warning.
never read in, how much are we aware of Lynn's past? Most of us are aware of CCAP, and we are all aware of how it works. We all have a past some not as bad as others. With that being said, as Lynn used to say, you can't con a con. So take a look and decide for yourselves. Okay. I can actually mention now at age 26, Lynn was involved in armed robberies, 5 prior DUIs, money theft and meds. She was let go of her employment that she stole out of her manager's, stole from her manager out of her purse. She had been behind and had to move numerous times because she was behind on rent. And she wasn't, never really worked a full-time job at the salon. It was usually 3 nights a week and for a few hours. I would just like to thank everybody for their time on this. And I would like to say one other additional thing, that the
Please do.
conduct I deserved in this, or that I observed in this courtroom during trial, was most appalling and disturbing, to say the least. And it doesn't give me much hope in our system. And I'm sure you all know who you are. And I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Ms. Flowers, was there anything you wanted to say about your daughter's character and what this court should consider at sentencing? Or have you finished your statement?
I do believe that I would hope, I don't believe in that she's guilty. So this is it has been very hard for me. I do not believe that she killed her. I do believe for various reasons that my girlfriend took her own life, and she has a record to show it. And I would hope that I'm leaving it to you to look into this and give it your deepest sympathy and thoughts on this matter, and taking it into consideration when making that decision.
Ma'am, she was found guilty. Take it into your deepest consideration and sympathy. Like, you have to tell me why I should do that. You can't just, like, victim blame the actual victim and like your daughter's the angel, but like not actually talk about why your daughter should not have a life sentence. Like, it was just, oh my gosh, like that was very, very painful. I thought it was important to still include, because I think the mom, to me, this statement enables Jesse's behavior to me. If this was my child caught in this and they had done all of these lies and everything, I'd be like, stop. Like, I support you. I love you. But like, this is BS. You're caught. like now you need to you need to change your behavior. You need to stop writing 50-page, I don't know how long it was. You need to stop writing these long letters to the judge. You need to get your stuff together. Like, you need to work on you. Stop trying to make yourself the victim. Like, to me, I saw so much enabling. And stop. Even, let's say Lynn did have some DUIs in the past. Let's say she did have like some, but armed robbery? I don't know that I believe that. I don't know that but like, okay, let's say she did have something like that. That does not mean that she should go the way that she went. Because the judge is going to say, if somebody was going to unalive themselves, they wouldn't do it slowly over years using Visine, and then all of a suddenly do it as they run out of money. And the person who it really seems like might have done this continues to misuse the victim's money. Not, make it make sense. It doesn't make any sense. And when it doesn't make sense, I don't think it's true. And so I needed to scream about that. And so that's why I'm sorry we had to be put through that, but we kind of did. Her lawyer is gonna talk on her behalf. So we're gonna listen to that in just a moment.
Thank you. Attorney Jones, is there anyone else on behalf of Ms. Kurczewski who would like to make a statement?
No, Your Honor, I believe that's all.
All right, go ahead.
Your Honor, if I may, just some housekeeping matters. On the state PSI, there's a change on the cover page. They listed the theft as a C-class felony, which was ultimately lowered. That's also an error on I think it's the last page, or strike that page 11 of the private PSI. Otherwise, we don't have any specific changes to that. with respect to custody
And let
credit,
me just, thank you for that. Obviously, there's an amended order, really just needed to notate it, but I caught that and I'm well aware of that, but thank you.
I figured you were just, for the record. And then with respect to custody credit, we have 1,035 days. I think those are independent from June 5th of 2021 through today's date, not including today's date.
It's a number I came up with as well.
Okay,
Does the state agree with that?
1,035?
Yes.
Yes,
All
that's
right,
what I have
thank
as
you.
well.
so we all got the math right. Anyways.
It's always good when 3 lawyers are involved.
Right, exactly. Anyways, Judge, look, my comments will be extremely brief, primarily for the fact that my client's maintaining her innocence. She wants me to tell the court that. She wants me to tell the court that she didn't commit this crime, and that's she plans to vigorously appeal this. That being said, the court obviously has to sentence on the jury's verdict. The court here has some discretion. Obviously, it's going to be a life sentence. The question becomes when and if do we make the defendant eligible for parole? And as you know, the court can make that as early as 20 years and obviously can also make it without. I always hesitate when I'm doing a homicide sentencing in sort of remembering that each case that comes before this court is without a doubt the most paramount case for a defendant, the victim's family, the defendant's family. But in our system, we have to put sort of homicides on a continuum. We have to look at the worst of the worst and then look back from there. Obviously, to the individuals involved, it is the worst of the worst. But in this system that we have to sort of place them in degrees. And I think when we look at this case, Judge, given that I'm not conceding any of the facts, obviously my client's maintaining her innocence, but with respect to that, this is a case where if we allow the defendant to be eligible after 20 years, she's going to be just shy of 60 years old, given the credit. We don't know what the defendant will be like in 20 years. We don't know the person she'll be, and we certainly don't know any sort of danger that she might pose to society. And I think that that's exactly what we reserve these types of cases for that to be reviewed. And I think that review of that is appropriate in this case after 20 years, and that would be my request to the court. With respect to background and character, I think you have more than enough evidence, both in both PSIs. I'm not going to rehash them for this court. I don't think that's necessary. But I think what we have here is we have a situation where there's a lot of moving parts and there's a lot of conflicting opinions. Now, I didn't do the trial. I didn't live the trial, but I've been able to look through both transcripts and recordings of the trial, and I've been able to see a lot of the evidence that was presented, used more than I would if I wasn't involved in the trial and was just asked to do sentencing. And a lot of things struck me in reviewing this trial. And I'm not here to relitigate the issues. I'm just saying that this did strike me as a very unusual case with a lot of issues that I think maybe went unresolved. And so I'll leave it at that. But at the end of the day, Judge, I think that it behooves us as a society to at least take a look 20 years from now and see what Jessy will be in that time frame. And I think that, again, that obviously doesn't allow her to be released in 20 years, and the court knows that. But I think it just behooves us to not throw away somebody's life and not say, hey, in 20 years, let's evaluate where we're at, see what, if any, danger she might have posed to the community. She would have obviously had been punished and have some specific and general deterrence. What programming has she been able to engage in? What has she been able to do to move forward and improve herself in that time frame? And then should we allow her back into society? I think to strip the process of that review is just going too far in this case, and I'd ask the court not to do that. So I will leave my comments with that, Judge, that I believe that you should allow a review of probation and parole after 20 years of confinement, which would happen by my calculations in 2022. Strike that. 2042.
So to me, her attorney did a really good job, and the judge is going to listen to what he said and use that. She's going to get more than 20 years, but the judge is going to listen to what he said. And so, let's see how much. Okay, so I'm going to skip over Jessy reading Lynn's letters, and let's hear her statement because it's okay. Okay, we're just gonna skip that part and get to her.
2 days later, on October 3rd, 2018, I was with her in the morning. I left to run some errands and to return later in the day to find her dead and life forever changed in that instant. I will fill in some gaps shortly, but I want to fast forward 9 months to July 9th, 2019, where I was arrested and have been in custody ever since. I was first revoked and sent to prison for almost 2 years on decade-old forgery charges for assisting in her suicide. On June 4th, 2021, the day before I was to release from prison, I was charged with first-degree intentional homicide and thefts. I was transferred to Waukesha County Jail, where I have remained incarcerated 2.5 years on $1 million bail awaiting trial. It has now been over 5 years since her death, and some days it feels like yesterday, others it's as if all time stopped, or others I feel as though I've been locked up forever, screaming and fighting, while nobody is listening or doing anything in this reoccurring nightmare, only to wake up and realize it is my life. Early on, I was silenced by a protective order, meaning I wasn't allowed to speak out. Then I chose, after many conversations with my attorneys, not to take the stand, which I deeply regret. It was a huge mistake in my eyes. I went against.
Let's go back. I chose to not take the stand. Okay, I chose to not take the stand. Okay, let's keep going.
What I have always said and believed for people who are innocent when I didn't testify. Due to us not understanding, my mother was not able to take the stand because we were talking daily about all that was happening during trial, which nobody got to know. I sat here every day during my trial listening while everyone talked about Lynn, my mom, and I, like they knew us, and I bit my tongue, which is extremely difficult. And today, as I sit here at my own sentencing, again, I have listened to everyone else talk, and now it is time to do what I want, what I need to do, and what I should have done long ago. It is time to speak out. There is a time for everything, a time to be silent, as I was, and a time to speak, as I am now. I want it. I know it doesn't matter what I say here today. It won't change my conviction or what you already decided for my sentence or what people may think of me, but these things I need to share and say because there was and is so much to this case. First, though, before I forget, I want to.
I think her lawyer was really smart to recommend that she not take the stand. And also, her attorney probably let her know that she could not lie. If she did take the stand, she would have to tell the truth. So the attorney can't suborn perjury. Is that the word? Like they can't know that she's lying about something. And so it's my understanding that she gave at least 6 statements to the police, and each one of those statements are radically different. Not a little different, radically different. Her statement from when she was first kind of interviewed and talked to the most recent one, to this most recent kind of recounting of everything, that she found the letters and that it was an unaliving herself situation. That is all what she said to try, in my opinion, to try to get away with her crime, which, okay. Let's keep going.
To take the time to thank the jurors, the witnesses, court officials, from reporters, clerks, deputies.
Remember that she's thanking them right now, because I think at the end she blames them for where she's at. So remember that she's thanking them right now. It's a little bit of love bombing. Like she's thanking them right now. But it's gonna turn in about an hour. We can't listen to every word of it. But like, wow.
Everyone and anyone involved in this case for their time, as it was very consuming. I also want to thank all of the attorneys I have had and you, Judge Doro. I have waited years for this trial and the truth to be known, but they got it wrong because nobody got to hear even half of what really happened. Nobody got to know the real story, or even the real us for that matter. Everyone on the state side gave the jury and everyone else who didn't know us preconceived notions of what our relationship was with Lynn. And the truth is, they didn't know her and they didn't know us to know any of that. Lynn was our family. Lynn was my mom's best friend. She was who my mom called for anything and everything. For me, at times, Lynn was a second mom, or Aunt Linny, or sometimes my best friend. She was all in one. At times, we were closer than I was with my own mom and some of my own family. Sometimes I went to her before my mom or for things I couldn't or didn't want to go to my mom for. I want you to actually get to know who Lynn was as a person, the Lynn that I knew, the Lynn I grew up knowing.
Uh-oh. No. Wait a minute. What happened? Uh-oh. Something happened with the stream.
Wanted or you knew you would like. She loved going out to eat at her favorite restaurants or meeting at her usual bars for drinks. She loved being the beautician because she could make her own hours, working where and when she wanted. She never had a lot of money, but she was happy and did all she could for anyone. That was the Lynn before she went to prison for her 5th DUI, and it all changed. While there, she lost her dad. She was not able to be there with him, say goodbye, or go to the funeral. It crushed her, broke her, and she was sad, angry, and depressed, and was put on medication. She came out a totally different Lynn than we ever knew or saw. The only one constant was her drinking before and after. That stayed the same. She drank a lot. Maybe if anything, it got worse after because she wasn't doing much outside her home. Even when she was on extended supervision, she drank. She had bottles hidden around her apartment, so when she had home visits with her agent, they wouldn't find them. I know this because even when I was there,
If I was the victim's family, I would have had to step out during this. Like, this is ridiculous. And Buttercup asked a great question. If I was innocent, would I get on the stand? And if I had told multiple misstatements, because when you get on the stand, you have to stand up against cross-examination. And I think she would have crumbled against like with cross examination. I don't think she would have come across well to a jury. I don't like so I hope to never be in that position. I would listen to my attorney and we would have to talk about why they thought I should or shouldn't. But I do think sometimes not getting on the stand. So like with the case I just covered where the wife got on the stand, but the dad didn't, out in Ohio. Michigan, y'all know what I'm talking about. The parents that were just found guilty. I have their sentencing because I think it's on Tuesday. I'll be covering their sentencing on Tuesday. Crumbly. So James Crumbly, and because the wife got on the stand and it went horribly. James did not, and it could have he still was found guilty, but I think it would have been worse if he had got on the stand. And so I do think there are times where even an innocent person, it might not be good. Remember, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just a psychologist that talks about this stuff. So I am not giving this as like legal advice, just as a person. I can understand why sometimes somebody might not get on the stand. I think she comes off as kind of angry and bitter and like she doesn't I don't think she comes across as likable or friendly. Like uh, I don't I don't know that if I was on the jury, it probably would have been worse if she had said anything. And think about like Alec Murdaugh. He tried to sway the jury. He tried to get on the stand and say all that he said, and it didn't help. He was still found guilty. So
at her apartment off of Sunset Drive in Waukesha, the first place she got after prison. Back then, I was even helping drive her around to doctor's appointments and other things. That was in 2016. Little known fact, people who knew Lynn knew she hated.
so we'll need lots of intermission for this sentence. So Jennifer Crumbly, y'all, her lawyer is offering to let Jennifer do her sentence at her house. This lawyer that like is worried about where her kids are doing on her phone. She's supposedly not a very good mother. She who like she kind of described herself as not a very responsible person. She's offering for Jennifer Crumbly to serve her sentence at her house. Like, does she pay you for that? Like, I have never in my life heard of that. That blew my mind out the water. And then the father, James, making so his threats, I think he came across as kind of like a mean person. Like he was kind of like wishing bad things to the prosecution. Like he said some things that were not appropriate. And I don't know because I think at one point he was like send this to her. Like he knew he was being recorded and he didn't care. Like, this is not gonna help you for sentencing, dude. This is not gonna help you at all. We're gonna try. Like, we have so much longer to go. Do y'all see how much further? Like, I think, oh my God, like we'll have to see where we can fast forward some. Okay, let's boost it up to 1.25 for anyone that needs it at the regular pace. I have the link to the full video down below.
Hated Waukesha. She was living there because she was on supervision. Later, after her mom died, she purchased a Pewaukee condo. Her realtor pushed reluctantly because it was on the edge of Waukesha. She chose it. She got disability and never went back to work. She didn't like being around people and she withdrew. She became a hypochondriac, anxious, paranoid, insomniac, and would only leave the house at certain times. Her health changed, as did her attitude and appearance. She would call us at all times, talking for hours about nothing and everything, sometimes making no sense at all and completely drunk. She would sleep 2 to 4 hours and be wide awake, starting her day at 3, 4 a.m. outside, doing gardening or running errands, and home before 8, 9 in the morning, done for the day. Sometimes she would be drinking at all hours of the day and would be drunk by 8, 9, 10 a.m. Even her neighbor Jean testified. They had stopped regularly talking because of Lynn's drinking and an incident from when she was drunk. Another fact of Lynn, from the old apartment to the new condo, after some incidents there, she had also hid some of her alcohol bottles. If you remember, the deputy medical examiner testified about finding 2 bottles of vodka in the garbage. Lynn had 2 large garbage bins that she used for storage. They were never for garbage. She put towels, dishcloths, etc., and her vodka bottles, so they were out of sight. She used a plastic pick and save bag on the closet door handle as garbage and daily threw it in the large garbage bin in the garage. I also remember about 6 months or so before she had passed, I had went out to her condo with a friend whom she had never. Have the $4 it is for a jail phone call, and it's never just one call. You need multiple. You are put on hold and passed around. And while on that subject, I did call the public defender's office when I was first arrested back.
I was muted that entire time. No. I was muted that entire time. So what I was trying to say is that we were gonna skip ahead because during all this time, what she's going to do is just blame everybody else. And so now she's at the part where she's talking about her horrible treatment within the jail and all the wrong that's happened to her there. And yes, so that is where we are. Welcome, Karen. We have a bunch of people from the UK in the chat as well. Um, welcome, welcome. All right. And so I was saying some phenomenal things and y'all heard none of it. Absolutely none of it. Just tag me, Sarah, if you do. Like I was going on and on for myself. Elaine, I'm so sorry. My bad. All right. So we skipped ahead because she's just going to give what I remember what I said. Pathological liars will give you details that don't matter. Like she's sitting here talking about like I don't know, like giving these minor details, and I don't know if any of it's true. It could be, but like that can sometimes be a red flag when you ask somebody a question and they start giving you all of these details about like, but they never answer your actual question. So like pathological liars, they'll give you a lot of small details, but they won't be related to the question you actually asked. So the question you asked was, where were you? And they start saying, oh, your mom, but they'll start giving you all of these weird details that don't talk about where they were. Or if it is about where they were, like it's super duper specific. Like, but then there will be receipts that go against what they said, which is just huge red flag. Like to me, it was just, and the judge is going to point out the fact that the gag order was for her. It was for her protection because every time she spoke, what she said could be used against her. Like they were trying to protect her because she was speaking without like consulting with her lawyers, and she's giving all of these details, and she's saying all this stuff and all this stuff she did, and all that stuff could be used against her. And so the judge was actually trying to protect her.
Back in July 2019. And do you know nobody would help me? When they went to look me up, I wasn't charged with anything. I was on probation, on a probation hold. They said if and when I was charged, or if my probation proceeded with revocation, they would be notified and come and see me. So as far as getting help or knowing what to do or speaking with someone, I got nowhere. So yes, I did drop slips to see the detectives after my first interrogation because I did nothing wrong and nobody else was helping. I had nothing to hide and figured if I spoke to them, they would realize they were wrong. I ended up writing and waiting over 2 weeks on multiple phone calls to the public defender's office before I finally got someone to come and see me. And then I had already hired an attorney after my mom called around, but it was too late. If there is any advice I have for anyone, whether you did something wrong or not, do not speak to anyone without an attorney. They use everything and anything against you. They make you feel you did wrong, even when you didn't. They play mind games. They lie. It is all so wrong.
And it almost sounded like she said even when you did, but she said didn't. She said didn't, but like even when you even when you did, even when you didn't.
How they continue to get away with it. Everyone watched hours of my interrogations, but the truth is there was so much that was edited out, so much more that people never got to see. Again, it is only what they wanted you to see and hear. For the last 5 years, everything I do is monitored, whether it is mail, phone, or visits. Granted, I have nothing to hide, but while I was fighting my case and going through trial, it is not right because the state made sure to listen to it all. And then fair trial, well, that's all crap too. Because if it were, we would have been able to put out a full and fair trial presenting all the facts and evidence instead of it being a one-sided story by the state. I am sorry, but this is wrong, and I am paying for something I did not do, and I will have to wait years fighting an appeals process because I did not receive a fair trial. I didn't get my due process right to present my full defense to the jury. To what I watched in shock while sitting at my 4-week trial, and I am not the only one who feels this way. I have heard and listened as plenty of people in the public agreed, many who didn't even know me or Lynn, but said that this case did not make sense. I was railroaded, that I didn't get a fair fight, and I am saying I didn't.
I think one of her letters said like this doesn't make sense. Like I think that was in one of her letters. I think that was supposed to be written by somebody else, but it was supposed to be written by like some concerned citizen, I think. That girl, like I think it was supposed to be written by somebody else, but it's in this language.
And I know I did. I cried and screamed every day at my attorneys. So much was missed, so much was not heard, so much was lost in translation. Nobody understands TV shows of people on trial is nothing like actual trials. Nobody should be plastered on TV. Not their trials, their court hearings, their cases, etc. None of it. People think because they saw me on TV, they know me. Well, they do not. Some say I like attention. Let's be very clear, I do not. Not even one bit. It's quite embarrassing. It's hard, it's frustrating, it's a mess. I got people judging me on what they see, making assumptions, talking about me, saying this or that, and I try not to care what people think. But some days it just hits me, and I do, because it isn't me. I didn't do this. Or the others who pass by and whisper, there goes the eye drop killer or Visine murderer, and this and that. I don't care for any of those titles, nor is it me. I am super emotional. I cry a lot because it is a lot I am going through. During trial, I had to hide a lot of that, per my attorneys, and that was hard. During breaks, I would cry, and I was told to clean myself up because they didn't want the jury or cameras to see me like that. This is me. I am human, and this is all so much. Why can't I show who I am? Do you know the day I was convicted in jail in the pod I am housed in? The other inmates sat watching on TV. The correctional officer laughed and said what a joke I was. How I was fake crying. How if you held a cup to my eyes, it would be empty. This is no joke. This is not funny. This is my life. And I am being held responsible for taking her own life, for Lynn taking her. There are major issues the jury never got the chance to hear, all relevant, and important testimony. And also the jury had before it evidence not properly admitted was so obscured a significant issue that it may be fairly said that the real controversy was not fully tried. The state claimed I was a lying, greedy murderer. That is what they said this case was about. They want you to believe this case was a homicide and that it was all about money and Visine. Let's be very clear here. There was no murder. I did not commit murder. I did not poison Lynn, give her pills, or anything else. She either committed suicide or died from an accidental overdose. I was not greedy. I never took $1 from Lynn, ever. Nor did Lynn die from Visine. That's what they want you to believe, because clearly having 40 to 50 pills in her system is normal. The combination of those pills alone could kill somebody. Then let's add her ailments and medical issues too. You heard the medical examiner and the pathologist list off a ton of things. Interstitial mitosis, I don't even know. Hypertension, hepatitis stenosis, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, a combination of baculolephin, ropinirole, alprazolam, hydrocodone, and cybobenzaprine use. The state says it's just Visine because it couldn't have been there. It shouldn't have been there. The ME stated on the cause of death, States Exhibit 36, she died from tetrahydrazine or THC poisoning, manner of death, homicide. As stated on the death certificate, this fatal injury occurred at an unknown time, at an unknown date, when the decedent was given THC by another. The ME doesn't know what day or the time she died, but can say she died by THC given to her by another. How can she say that when it did not happen? And for that matter, there is no proof, no evidence, because none exists since it didn't happen. There was no fingerprint evidence, no DNA evidence, no Visine bottle taken, no water bottle taken, no plate taken, no spoon taken, no nothing taken for that matter, except some medication bottles. There was no physical evidence for this case. Then they say the scene was staged with crushed pills. Funny, because those same pills were in her tox screen. Also odd was the affidavits the very own detectives used and wrote to get records. State the plate of crushed pills was on the victim's chest or stomach, yet the picture shows them on the side table. I wonder how they got there and how fragments of those pills got on Lynn's chest. Maybe, just maybe, that happened when the medical personnel put the electrical pads on her upper body. They moved the plate, hence spilling some of the fragments. Seen as a lot of things were moved.
So she's going to give her thoughts about what could have happened, and she's going to talk for an additional, I think, for quite a bit. I'm going to fast forward to the very end of it so that we can hear the end, and then we can skip past the break and get to the judge.
The state is still trying, but try as they might, I am sure they will keep doing all they can, as I know I will too. It will not silence me. It will not break me, nor will it change that I did not take her life. We are hard pressed on every side, but not crushed, perplexed, but not in despair.
Yeah, she's going to give scriptures.
Persecuted, but not abandoned, struck down, but not destroyed. 2 weeks before my sentencing, I had a meeting with my attorney regarding restitution. The state is requesting almost $400,000 in restitution in an 86-page document that was submitted to the courts that was under seal, where even I can't get a copy to thoroughly go through it. I did review it with my attorney briefly, but have not been able to thoroughly go through it. But I was to agree or dispute within 2 weeks. How am I to do that without exactly thoroughly going through it? These numbers and figures that all came out in trial, so I am not sure why it is a secret and sealed. Yet the envelope with the fake letters brought up prior to jail, not from the jail, not mailed from the jail, who knows, was submitted to the courts at sentencing materials before my prior sentencing date, and that wasn't talked about during trial, nor wasn't talked about trial, but that was sealed. That was not sealed. It makes no sense. They can again pick and choose who sees and hears what they want and what they can't. But it is up to my attorneys to request to seal something. But again, I did not have attorneys working for my best interest or doing anything at that time. They were too busy saving themselves to help me, talk to me, or file anything on my behalf except withdrawal. And because I had counsel listed on record, I could not do anything for myself with the courts or get another attorney to.
So she went through a lot of attorneys, and if they wouldn't do what she wanted them to do, it's my understanding that like the grievances that she had with her attorneys, because it even happened between sentencing, like right after sentencing, like that's how she got a new attorney for sentencing that wasn't there during the actual trial. And this guy seems good. She seems to be okay with this person. This guy seems good. We're almost at the end, just a little bit longer.
Defendants are at a huge loss to try and defend themselves or help in their own defense. It is damn near impossible, and that is unacceptable. It needs to change. There is no such thing as all defendants are to be considered innocent until proven guilty by the court of law. I was guilty from the beginning and never had a proper and fair chance to prove my innocence. So do your best, but I am still standing. I am still fighting, and I will not give up. As God is my witness, this case is far from over. You may think by convicting me and sentencing me that it is, but it is not over by a long shot. Until my conviction is overturned and my name is cleared, I will not rest, as I know neither will Lynn. I know a lot of people may have things to say since I have talked about God, but that is between me and God. I know as you sit here, you're probably thinking you've been convicted. Yes, I have, but I also know there are people who have been imprisoned who were wrongly convicted for crimes they did not commit. It happens, and it did happen in this case. I was advised to expect and prepare myself for you to hand down a sentence of life without parole. But even in judgment, God is merciful. So I ask you, put aside what many others are expecting and asking of you, and to leave the outside influences of media and politics behind, as you have seen, heard, and know more of the facts and circumstantial evidence of this case than most. As I stand before you, or sit, I am asking you to be fair, just, and merciful with my sentence today, because even though I was convicted, my innocence will prevail in God's time. Here at Waukesha County Jail, where I have been incarcerated for over 2 years, I started reading to the whole pod before bed, nightly devotions and prayers to the ladies, when someone was to be released, whether they were headed home, another jail, prison, or treatment. I would share one of my favorite verses, which is Joshua 1:9. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. So I may be going to prison for now, but I will be okay. I will not be alone, and this is not the end of my story. I will continue fighting for Lynn's truth and mine. Thank you very much for your time today.
Attorney Jones, do you have anything else to offer?
No, Your Honor.
All right, court's going to take a 90-minute break. We'll come.
So they took that 90-minute break, and the judge came back to deliver her ruling. Judge Duro is phenomenal, and so let's go ahead and hop right into her sentence.
Kurczewski appearances are as they were before. Court has reconvened after the lunch hour to pronounce sentence in this case. Before I pronounce sentence, though, I do want to go through some of the remarks that were made here today and my impressions of this case, this trial, and the jury's verdict. Not commenting on their verdict, but we're here today, first and foremost, because there were 3 jury verdicts in this case, 3 guilty verdicts, 1 for intentional homicide and 2 for theft. And that, of course, was the culmination of a case that was initially filed in June of 2021. Of course, not the start of the investigation, not the start of legal problems for the defendant. I'm well aware that ultimately in 2019, you were revoked in part due to allegations related to these charges. And it was basically upon your discharge the day before that this case was filed. Now, from my perspective, not only was this a very unusual case due to the allegation of a poisoning by an over-the-counter substance found in Visine, it was unusual because of the amount of time that was put into the investigation. I don't think anyone watching this trial, sitting in this courtroom, or even watching, summaries of it, was surprised that in October of 2018, the death investigation, which was very normal, anytime someone was found deceased outside of a hospital setting, required a death investigation. I don't think anyone was surprised that initially people on scene thought it was a suicide. That's the call that came in. That's how really the scene looked. I think it was Detective Loberg who said there were no signs of forced entry. He looked outside, he looked inside. There wasn't anything to suggest any type of external trauma. He'd been on overdose cases in the past. There weren't any syringes found or anything like that, but there were the crushed pills and some other things. And I think that scene was made to look a certain way for a reason. On the one hand, the defendant wants us to believe that this is all a big mistake, that this was a suicide. And of course, the state presented a case to a jury with a lot of evidence, and a jury found that it was not a suicide. And I'll be more specific. They were not asked to determine whether it was suicide. They were asked to determine whether it was a homicide. And of course, if a jury believed it were a suicide, they would have found you not guilty. That would have been their reasonable doubt. But that's not what they did. But that investigation, like any investigation into a death, doesn't happen overnight. Doesn't happen in a vacuum. Samples are taken from the body, and those samples are ultimately tested. What I think is really interesting for me is that somewhere along the way, a very astute scientist thought it was important enough to ask NMS Labs, that's I'm sure one of their scientists, to include in their expanded panel tetrahydrozoline, an over-the-counter, a drug found in over-the-counter medication. I don't want to say it was a trend, but I know when listening to the testimony of Dr. Kacinko, she said one of her responsibilities was to look for trends in drugs. And even when we listened and heard Dr. B testify, she talked about how while this may have been the first poisoning she had seen through tetrahydrozoline, it was not the first time she was faced with looking at something novel or new as part of her job. I mean, scientists do this all the time. They take known information, known data, known research, and when faced with something not seen before, they render opinions, they extrapolate. That's how medicine grows and advances are made, whether it be by pathologists who are medical examiners or cancer researcher. And if you kind of flip it around and think about cancer research, we would praise someone for that type of work. And so unbeknownst to everyone in this courtroom, in 2018, tetrahydrozoline was not something we expected to find. It was not something any of these detectives knew was even going to be screened for. It was not something the medical examiner knew to screen for. And I do believe it was something you, Ms. Kurczewski, banked on no one testing for. As you know, I sat through this entire trial, and not just this trial, but obviously the entire case, presiding over a variety of motion hearings, including the Daubert motions, where I heard from a couple of the experts and made some rulings. And I know you take issue with a lot of my rulings, and I will gladly challenge those. You can challenge those on appeal. I'm one person sitting up here doing the best that I can, given the law and the facts that are before me. And whether it's 3 individuals on the Court of Appeals, if that's appropriate, or all the way up to the Supreme Court wants to review and tell me I got it wrong, I am human. but I don't think I got it wrong in this case.
I don't think she did.
You may not agree with the decisions that I made, but let me tell you, I did my utmost to ensure that you had a fair trial. Every step along the way, wanting to make sure if I delayed something, you were okay with it, because I knew, because you made it abundantly clear, you were waiting for your day in court. And you and I had a number of colloquies or conversations in this courtroom or other courtrooms about the delays. Because honestly, I want to make sure that any trial, especially a homicide trial, is done right the first time. It's of no benefit to anyone if convictions get reversed on appeal. It happens sometimes. There's advances or new evidence or whatever the case may be. You complain, for example, about my protective order. And I think little do you realize, not only did I put that in place for the integrity of these proceedings, it was put in place to protect you. See, I've sat in the shoes of Attorney Jones. I didn't like when there were surprises. As an attorney, as a defense attorney, I wanted to control the narrative as best as I could to protect my client and his or her rights. Now, when I was on the other side, in the state's table or at the state's table, I used to train police officers on confessions. I love confessions. Why do I love confessions? Makes my job easier as a prosecutor. So I have this unique ability that really not a lot of judges have, to look at both sides, and now really the third side as a judge, and kind of see what's going on. And so every time you make an extra statement, you complicate things for your defense team. That's your right to do it. But I wasn't going to have that happen until this case. I didn't want to have extrajudicial statements, meaning outside a court trial, or in this case, a sentencing as well, that could impugn the integrity of these proceedings. It's not good for you. It's not good for the case. I want to make sure we have a jury that's fair and impartial. And in this particular case, there were extra steps taken because of the interest. You may not have, I guess, liked, I'm gathering from your statements here today, that there were cameras in the courtroom and that this was on court TV and law and crime and other things. But here's the thing. I learned during and following the pandemic, when we shut down courts, or at least limited them to a great degree, what I learned is I started doing live streaming, because that was a way for people to still be engaged, to watch what's going on, to keep our courts open and operating during a time of uncertainty. People were very interested. The court system and the legal system is critiqued and criticized all the time for not being transparent. So by having cameras in the courtroom, when there is that interest, I believe it fosters transparency.
Exactly.
It's not about sensationalizing this. I did a very, very extensive trial order on that to make sure that didn't happen. You're not wrong that there's an interest and that people do different things with that interest. We are seeing trials televised more and more. People are fascinated with the legal system. I had a request and I granted it. Nothing more, nothing less. But some of my rules and requirements were meant to make sure that nonetheless, things were fair and impartial. Fair and impartial doesn't mean you're going to agree with everything that I do. Fair and impartial doesn't mean you're going to agree with how a jury decides this case, how it's investigated, how it's presented. There's a lot of law on evidence. There's a lot of case law, volumes of it on what comes in, what doesn't come in. Some of those rules impacted evidence coming into this case. Other things are beyond my control, whether the state chooses to offer something or not, or whether your own attorneys choose to offer something or not. But a courtroom isn't a free-for-all either. I do my very best to ensure that relevant evidence comes into the court.
Sarah, her blink rate is going to go through the roof by the end. By the end, she's going to have a lot of trouble with a lot of this.
And reliable evidence. So I sat through this case, 16 days of trial from beginning to end, not including sentencing and any of the things that happened following the conviction. 36 witnesses. We had 4 expert witnesses, 2 pathologists, a pharmacologist, and then a toxicologist. And they heard a lot about tetrahydrozoline. What I learned about tetrahydrozoline is how it affects the human body. I had the criminal complaint, obviously, all throughout this case, but until a case goes through the trial process, I don't really know what all is going to come in. I have a good idea, but I didn't know the breadth or the depth of it. I didn't know, other than filings, for example, with the medical examiner and the Daubert motions, that's the first time I really got a lot of that information with substance. And a lot of times I don't even have that information until there's a trial. But what did I learn? What is tetrahydrozoline? I think at its simplest, it's a sedative, right? It's a substance that when used as approved for eye drops or nasal spray, it constricts, right? So it helps people breathe who have nasal congestion, and it helps with redness in the eyes. It is not approved for oral use. What do we know from the literature that's out there that predates this case? Some of it obviously coming in around or even after, is that there's really only 2 types of ingestions that are seen in the literature: accidental or malicious. No known literature about people dying from voluntarily ingesting it for a suicide. Why is that? Because that's a big question that I think needs to be answered. And that's because I think it's the last way anyone would ever commit suicide, because of how it affects the human body. It makes people sick. You weren't the first person to think about tetrahydrozoline. There have been movies and even Law and Order episodes, or an episode that I happened to see at one point, where
Judge Duro is throwing so much shade, and I'm sad to hear that she might have some interesting thoughts on women's reproductive health. But over here, we're talking about her trial coverage, and to me, she has been incredibly fair and impartial in more ways than I would have been, because I probably would have given Jessy life without the possibility of parole, because to me, she's not showing any remorse. Like, she would likely scam again. But in scamming, you don't get life in prison for the scamming part, but I don't know. That's why I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a judge. Those fates are not in my hands. But the fact that the judge just keeps showing her, like, I see you. I see what happened, and you didn't fool me. Like, to me, the judge makes that very clear.
there's some poisoning. We know from Henry Spiller, your own witness, he encouraged the FBI to look into it or get it on a list because of its use related to sexual assaults, that malicious ingestion, right? A poisoning. But like I said, at its core, it's a sedative. And how does it affect the system? During I think it was Ms. Kasinko's testimony, she talked about how when ingested, and obviously unknowingly, right? It's odorless, it's tasteless. You can give it to someone without them ever knowing it. It can reduce inhibitions. It creates, causes someone to be lethargic. It has a significant impact when in large amounts that shouldn't be in one's system it's a CNS depressant, right? So ultimately it affects breathing and heart rate and brain functioning and can lead to death. After listening and seeing and reading through all the evidence, just like the jury did, and I don't know what they ultimately or why they ultimately concluded it's a homicide. They don't have to explain their verdict. They just render a verdict, all having to agree. But as I saw everything, I have to ask out loud. It's a rhetorical question, but were you poisoning Lynn Hernan all along, following your release from prison?
No.
I'm not asking for an answer. This is my time. So do not interrupt me. She got markedly sicker following your reinsertion in her life on a daily basis, ultimately ending up in the hospital in September of 2018. Unexplained. Couldn't figure out what was going on. But what do we know? She got better. What could not have been happening in the hospital? Someone poisoning her.
And so when the judge corrected her, I am not asking for an answer, that to me, this judge has good boundaries for her courtroom. She tried her best with Darrell Brooks. Darrell Brooks, he's just more of an antagonistic type person. I do want to just address some of the things that I have flagged. Sarah, thank you so much. Um, Thank you for your comment. Welcome, Hope 8 Fear, and thank you for gifting a membership. And then Maddie, is there a diagnosis for people who make up stories, expect people to believe it, and or seem to believe their own stories like Jessy does? And so the thing we have to do with diagnoses within my DSM-5, the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual, they are looking at things that meet a clinical diagnosis. So sometimes we have words for things in everyday language. So psychopath, sociopath, those are not clinical diagnoses. That's just legal, that's just language that has come out of behavior, but that is not a diagnosis. So sometimes individuals with ADHD, because of impulsivity, sometimes people with ADHD might lie a little bit more. Sometimes individuals with borderline personality disorder, due to that fear of rejection and abandonment. So, because they've done studies on people that have compulsive lying. So, compulsive lying is just like that's lying about everything. Pathological lying is that manipulative, it's for a reason, there's some benefit for the lying, and some degree of lying is normal. Okay, so if you're a parent, so my 6-year-old earlier this year, he told a pretty big lie that could have gotten another child in but it's normal for kids to lie. We immediately realized that he was not telling the truth. The story, it didn't make any sense. The story made absolutely no sense. And so we handled it as parents. And the way that we personally handle it is talking with him about trust and the importance of trust, and then also just empathy for that other child, that he doesn't like this kid, and it's okay that he doesn't like him, but he can't lie on him. Like, That's where we draw our line and our boundary. And so there is not a diagnosis. Sometimes people, they might have some antisocial personality traits. They might have some narcissistic personality traits. And all of those things are a spectrum. So narcissism is a spectrum. And I talked about a video on a video recently about egoism, where there is some like healthy narcissism that we might refer to as like confidence. So to me, Judge Juro is like a boss. So like to me, she has a healthy idea that like I know what I'm talking about. I know what I'm doing. You're not going to intimidate me, but it's not over the top to where she's like inflated herself. So the narcissist secret, so somebody that does have narcissistic personality disorder, they have no ego and people are viewed as objects. I will say that again. Someone who is a true narcissist, people are viewed as objects and like a means to an ends, and they're not viewed as like a person. And so that's how somebody with narcissistic traits, they can discard like just discard like a child almost. Like they can like do things where we're all like, how can you do that? But like to that person, it was just an object. They didn't see the humanity of them. So that's on that far extreme of narcissism, you can see that. So I hope that's helpful. Let me know if y'all have questions. We're going to keep going.
Her with THZ, too much risk associated with that, cameras, whatever it may be. And I think that gave you the green light. You said I went undetected, because what I think was happening is that you were using it to control Lynn Hernan, to steal from her, to gain control of her accounts. I think you targeted her. I agree with the state's assessment on that. The perfect victim. No children, no parents, they were deceased with a fair amount of money. Why do I say that? Well, your past matters. Your past convictions for forgery, uttering, and misappropriation of personal identifying information matter. Because I'm a big proponent and believer that the best predictor of future behavior is past behavior. That's not to say people can't change, but we know you targeted people. And from my perspective, in a very aggravated way, because it's real easy to say, well, those convictions happened in 2011 and this didn't happen until 2018. But you were
Oops.
Said I'm not ready.
That's going to be hard. I'm going to try to find where we were. Oh no. So I wanted to clarify the comment that I made about 80, because we were talking about in general. So I was giving a very general statement when they've researched diagnoses and lying. So based on research, that's something, but that isn't going to be true for every person. There are going to be people without diagnoses that don't fit that, and there are going to be people with it that do. And so I wanted to clarify that. I hope that's helpful. All right. So we are going to try to see where we were. All right, let's go.
She clearly, if I were to believe the letters were written by Lynn, she wanted to meet him, but yet she never did.
Okay, I got to go back.
I don't think you wanted there to be opportunity in the world to make sure, if that evidence existed, to secure it.
Hold on, I got to go back.
In a way. But we know you targeted people. And from my perspective, in a very aggravated way, because it's real easy to say, well, those convictions happened in 2011 and this didn't happen until 2018. But you were revoked once following being in prison for about a year. It was 1 year of initial confinement, 3 years of extended supervision on each of those counts. You get revoked. So you're sentenced in 2011, you're released in 2012, you're revoked in 2014, you go back to prison, I think it was about 26 months or so. You're released again in February, late February of 2018. And it's shortly thereafter that these thefts start happening. And it's shortly thereafter that Lynn Hernan gets sicker and sicker. Now, I'm not sentencing you here today because I think you poisoned her all along. I'm sentencing you because a jury convicted you of a homicide based upon that. But I think it's important for everyone in this courtroom to know that's what I see. And that's what the evidence points to. Very planned, very deceitful. Maybe it wasn't your intent to kill Lynn Hernan. I don't know. Do I believe this was a suicide? Absolutely not. There's a lot of holes in the stories that you have told. I think you think you're smarter than everyone in this courtroom. All of your statements come after you get information that you now have to explain. Those letters, no way Lynn Hernan wrote those either herself or willingly. And I think that's supported by the thefts in this case. It's supported when you understand how tetrahydrozoline affects individuals, and that why do people choose it to assault someone? Because it can impair them. It can make them lethargic. It can make them lose their own inhibitions. It really, in those circumstances, with that malicious intent, is to control someone. I think the evidence points pretty squarely to that. I am not going to go through every single piece of evidence. I'm not going to go through every single witness. But it's important to really set the stage, so to speak, for why I believe not why I believe, but for how I'm going to sentence you here today. And really to respond to some of the things that you, your mom, and others have said on your behalf. You know, it is one thing to maintain your innocence. I support the jury system. I support people making the state prove their case beyond a reasonable doubt. That's what makes the system that we have in the United States so great. I'm not here to tell you it's perfect every step along the way. We're a system filled with human beings. But I don't see this as one of those cases where it's just an all-out, let's get Jessy Kurczewski. There's no reason for anyone here to make anything up. You are the common denominator that brings all of us here today. It is your actions, not theirs, and it's not Lynn's. I find it interesting that you criticize people like Anthony Posa, Corrine Posa, Jim Kelleher, and others for not knowing Lynn, for not getting her help, for, you know, you criticize them for saying, well, she wasn't suicidal. They didn't know her. They weren't close to her in the last year of her life. But ironically, you want us to believe all the statements that you've made, and yet you'll back off and say, but I wish I could have done more. I wish I would have seen more. I have these regrets because I didn't get her more help. I don't think you can hold those beliefs together. I think they're opposed to each other. I think it's a convenient position to take when you criticize them, and yet you can't go so far as to say, well, I saw it all. You have to stop short of that. Otherwise, you couldn't claim that you didn't know she was suicidal. And of course, we know that story changed over time. You are, I think, very upset over this thing about Whitnall Park. Here's the thing. You were in custody, okay? I don't know if it's very, very rare for police to take someone out of custody. But what they did was pretty amazing. They got you on what we'd call a FaceTime call, some type of video from their conference room at the jail to direct individuals. You want us to believe this evidence that exonerates you exists, and yet you had what?
All of that. Elaine again. It was so I did like a perfect shout out to Grizzly True Crime, and I was muted. And I muted myself so I can type in the chat sometimes. So, Grizzly True Crime, welcome. Thank you for being here. Judge Duro, to me, her pointing out the fact that bringing up the whole we did the FaceTime video, because Jessy tells the facts in a very convenient way. She leaves things out. She leaves out the fact that, because they're like, why didn't they look in the park? Why didn't they do that? She leaves out that they did go to the park. They did dig around. They had to, for her to show them where she put it. They did all of that. But she continues to say that narrative of they never did this. They never went there. Once again, to make herself the victim, in my opinion.
October, November, December, January, February, March, April, May, June, up to July 8th, at any point in time, to go get it if it really existed. You had all the opportunity in the world to make sure, if that evidence existed, to secure it in a way that was accessible, not in the ground at a park. Doesn't make sense. Same thing really with the letters that happened to show up after Lynn died. When were those turned over? Again, rhetorical question. I even listened to how you talk about the will and the wills and how this whole test thing with Anthony. Here's the thing. The initial will that was submitted to Judge Maxwell was typewritten and witnessed by strangers at a bank. You want us to believe that Lynn Hernan changed her will and didn't follow the same procedure that she did for the will that was initially admitted into probate and what stood. By the way, a will can't be witnessed by the beneficiaries. Would never have worked. If she were that suicidal and making all of these plans to kill herself and change her will, Lynn Hernan was smart enough to know how to do it the right way, if in fact she was the one to do it.
She didn't do it.
You have someone draft it, and you have neutral witnesses, like she did the first time. You go to a bank, you get it notarized. That's not what she did. There are a lot of holes in your version of events. And here's the thing. I didn't get the ability, nor did the jury, to have your story tested for its veracity. You have the absolute right at a trial not to testify, and there are pros and cons to doing so. You claim to regret not testifying. But the jury didn't get to hear that. That was your choice. That's not on me. That's not on the state. That's on you. The other thing I want to comment on, you want us to believe that you and your mom were so close to Lynn Hernan, that you loved her and cared for her more than anybody else. And yet you unabashedly throw her under the bus and impugn her character with these wild stories. You want us to believe.
I wanted to comment. So I don't know exactly what's going on with her head nodding. The head nodding, it could be like, I don't know that she's nodding in agreement. She may be trying to regulate her emotions. To me, she seems to be getting more and more upset as the judge is talking. Like her head nodding could be her in her own mind, like wanting to write this letter of how much of a victim she is. Nobody likes me, nobody hears me, nobody is on my side. I don't think she's nodding in agreement. I'm not a body language expert. Uh but I can't imagine. So Judge Duro is doing a phenomenal job. I don't think that Jessy is able to get information that she does not agree with. Like, and she is never going to admit that she was wrong. She is never going to admit. And you will see her blink rate towards the end is like she is blinking so fast towards the end. I think she was getting very, very upset. And I think she's just bobbing. I don't think she's agreeing. Those are just my thoughts.
That she killed herself because she killed her mom in the same way that she was killed. And again, poisoning oneself with Visine drops would be the last way someone would commit suicide. It does not. There's no known literature support for tetrahydrozoline causing a state of euphoria and pain relief and sleep. I should rephrase that last one. Making someone fall asleep. I suppose it could because of the effects as a CNS depressant, but the other effects on the digestive system and making one sick, again, no way. I think that's probably why a jury rejected, because perhaps they came to that same conclusion, that it just was not believable.
So many more letters.
Oh, the one other thing I wanted to comment on, because you referenced it as well, was the fact that you didn't review the restitution information. It's a pretty standard order that I get. It's a request for an order from the state due to victim rights legislation and the constitutional amendment to seal restitution information. But the order that I signed says that parties to the case are permitted access. You're a party to the case. Whether your attorney chose to give it to you or not, I don't know.
Great question. So restitution is to the victims. So she was found guilty of stealing Lynn's money. And so she's going to be ordered to make the victims whole. She's also going to have to pay for the $16,000 that the state paid for one, or like that, I think the state paid for one of her experts. She's going to have to pay for that. So there is all of this money that she's going to have to pay. So it's, if you do a crime and you're found guilty, you might owe restitution. And it's to try to make the victims, they'll never be whole because they'd rather have their family member. But in crimes like this, especially where there was money stolen, there's often restitution. In the Ruby Frankie case, they are looking to push off restitution. Like they're figuring out what they're going to do with all of that. And that's why they froze Jody's assets so that Jody couldn't sell off everything or like get rid of all of her money before they're able to see if the kids will get anything. I personally think Kevin Franke, the father, should not have access to any of that money. It's my understanding that any money that goes towards the Franke kids, that it'll be for their ongoing, probably their mental health care and any medical care that they need. So yeah. I think that hearing is in November to talk about restitution in that case.
I want to refocus this because what we're here today is really about giving voice to the one person who cannot speak today.
So, and I'm going to let the judge focus on Lynn again, but this is a really great question. So Jessy could be, so they did not block her ability to make money while she's in jail. So she could be paid to do a Netflix documentary. She could be paid. She could write a book. She's probably all the writing she does. To me, her writing style needs a lot of editing. It is very, very hard to read her writing to me, in my opinion. Like, it's her and Sarah Boone. When I try to read their letters, it is difficult because, and I love a good run-on sentence, but like we have like run-on pages. Like it's just one outlandish thought for a very long time, and I don't really know where we're going or why we're going that way. But Jessy could write a book. She could, if for any reason, she could like make it where people have to pay for her image and likeness. I don't know. Like she could do some things to make money in jail. She could. And so I believe the restitution is over $400,000
today. And that's Lynn Hernan. It's about honoring her life and punishing you as the person found legally responsible for her death. She cannot respond to any of the accusations that you and your mom have levied against her. She's gone. And you've taken away from your own life, but for Anthony and Corrine and Jim and Keith and all the other individuals, a bright light, as Anthony said, extinguished far too soon. You took that away. You took away future memories, birthday parties, luncheons, phone calls. You may have been with Lynn that last year or so of her life. But what do killers sometimes do? They target their victims, they isolate them, they control the narrative, they stay or show up at scenes. I mean, the bottom line is homicides generally don't make a lot of sense. It's the taking of another life intentionally. It defies all notions of goodness and decency. They don't make sense. And sometimes they're wild and crazy. And people like you do strange things. I believe for the sole purpose of trying to get away with it. I do believe you thought you had found the perfect way to take Lynn Hernan out, that it would go undetected. And again, maybe that wasn't initially. Maybe it was just to control the finances, to take her for the money that she had. But I think when she got to the hospital in September, and no one at that hospital found that substance, and you were getting to the end of the money, and really the only thing left of value was that condo, Lynn Hernan was better to you dead than alive. And you thought you could get away with it. You know, when I sentence individuals, There's a number of sentencing criteria. They fall into three main categories: the seriousness of the offense, the need to protect the public, and your character and rehabilitative needs. Your character includes who you are sitting here before me, the good, the bad, the indifferent. It includes your past convictions. They are important, especially as a
I will stop muting myself when I type because I keep doing this. So when she looks down, the blinking stops. I think she's mad at the judge. I think she's not happy with where this is going. And because the judge is saying like she's calling her a murderer. Like that's what you were found guilty of homicide. That is what that's where we are. And I don't think she likes that at all. And also, like, to me, the judge is calling her out in a way that I don't know if anyone really ever has. And she had to sit there and listen and not be able to say anything back. Like, I think her just having to sit here through this, but we had to sit through her almost 2 hours. Okay. So if you can see this, so this is where 2:05, she starts reading Lynn's statement. Okay, and then they went to break. Okay. So all the way, wait a minute. So no. So Lynn's letters are at 1:45. And then she goes all the way to like 3 hours and more than 30 minutes, almost 40. Like that was how long the judge just had to sit there and listen to it. And I'm very thankful that the judge did take her time and she said all of her thoughts to Jessy. And I don't know that it makes a difference for Jessy, but I hope the family felt if I was the family, I would appreciate this right now.
as it relates to counts 2 and 3, because there's a pattern in your life of taking advantage of people, whether it be your mom, your grandmother, whether it be patients in a clinic that you work at, or the mother of a friend you're living with. And you explain it away as, well, I had a gambling addiction. I just wanted to live. I needed a place, a roof over my head, however you described it in those moments. I think you thought you were a very good thief and that you could get away with even more. The seriousness of those theft convictions, well, let me go back. So I don't want you to walk out of here thinking, I don't think you have any redeeming qualities. I mean, obviously, while in the jail, I think you've tried to do what you can to make the most of unfortunate circumstances at your own hand. You obviously very diligently review all of the discovery materials. You do what you can to do your own research, to educate yourself. You help other inmates. I think you are blessed to have maybe some additional money coming in on your canteen, and you will help individuals who don't have any. I don't even frankly care what the motives are, whether they're purely good motives or if there's a pecking order back there. I don't know, but I do know you made a friend, and she said some very nice things about you today. Honestly, the only person I was really hoping to hear more from your mom about you. I have a lot in the PSI and the private PSI about that, but your mom spent every moment of her statement attacking everyone else in this courtroom and Lynn. Whereas Ms. McCarthy,
And her mom said nothing. And the judge tried. The judge was like, "Is there anything you'd like to say about your daughter's character? Like anything you would like to say?" And the mom was just like, I think she's innocent." Okay. Well, like she's been found guilty and I'm about to sentence her, and the option is life in prison or life with the possibility of parole. And the mom gave nothing to the judge for the judge to be more lenient on her daughter. The friend did, and that was sweet. That was sweet.
McCarthy came in is what we hope for and expect of character witnesses to tell me more about this other side. Because I do believe people are multifaceted. People have many sides. Even in the worst cases, like a homicide, there are redeeming qualities. And she told us about those. And I thank her for doing that, about how you took her under your wing. You kind of developed this relationship. You had lunch together, meals together, prayed together, did some studies together, and you helped her through a very trying time. As she said, being 70 and never incarcerated before, I'm sure that was not easy. And so I think there is a side to you that does care. I don't want you to think that I don't think you have a caring side. I mean, clearly you do. You cared for Scott Craig, you cared for his children, and in your own way, you made them feel important and loved. Now, there was another side to you, and I think he got it right when he described you. I mean, I think there was a reason you never introduced him to Lynn Hernan. I find that interesting. She clearly, if I were to believe the letters were written by Lynn, she wanted to meet him, but yet she never did. I don't think you wanted there to be any possibility of questions. And that's why I think, however you did it, you were able to keep Lynn isolated so that other people wouldn't question and perhaps uncover what was happening with the thefts. I know that you still have the strong support of your mother. I question at times whether that's healthy or not. If she's seeing things clearly.
In my opinion, from where I am, I know nothing of their relationship. The mother's behavior seems enabling to me. In my opinion, it seems very enabling. And I have to keep saying that because I don't know these people, and I'm just speaking from everything that we've seen from this public information. Mom seems to be enabling her. And if mom did write that all on her own, the way mom writes is a lot like how Jessy writes and thinks too. And that's a bit problematic to me. My thoughts.
I think she's, one of the few individuals who has, really bought the story, lock, stock, and barrel that you have spun. I think as a mom, we want to always see the good in our children and don't want to believe the worst. And it's really challenging and difficult to believe that your own child is capable of a homicide. It's either that or she's complicit and she knew and she was involved. I don't know. The seriousness of these offenses are significant. As a homicide, there's a loss of life. It is intentional. You were convicted of intentional homicide, not, for example, what some people might call manslaughter or even assisted suicide. And I know you probably don't agree with the decision that I made on that either, and that's okay. The law just did not support it. But here there was an intentional poisoning with a very specific intent for it to go undetected over time to cover up your thefts. It's aggravated in the sense this was a planned series of events. This was not, a crime of passion, for example. You have a relative.
Her blocking is now complete eyes closed. So she's now at complete, which seems a little emotionally immature to me. I don't know. I think she's lost the ability to regulate the emotion while the eyes are open, my thoughts, and that's why they're just completely closed right now. Yes, Sarah. Yes, exactly. Like, she's just like almost how, like, my 6-year-old, he's like, he hides and he's like, "You can't see me," 'cause, like, "I can't see you, you can't see me," and I'm like, "Dude." He did that when he was, like, 4, he now knows, but he's the worst. Well, I can find him easily when we play hide and seek, but and I think she's just regulating herself. I think she does not like what the judge is saying, and I think she knows that she's going to get significant time. The judge was nicer than I would have been. I will say that again for anyone that didn't hear me say it before. The judge was way nicer than I would have been.
Relatively minor record, even though there's 4 felonies. You don't have anything other than that. You didn't have issues as a juvenile. But there were thousands and thousands of dollars that were stolen by you before Lynn Hernan was killed and after. And it's all really related in terms of the seriousness, because you really don't have one without the other, because I do think the homicide was related and the motive was to cover things up. It was to not get caught and to do it in a way that you thought you could do to get away with it. I talked about the scene a little bit, and I think there's some aggravated factors about that. The way that scene looked, Dr. B talked about her opinion. She testified that she thought it was staged. She was concerned about it. It was not something she had seen. And, whether the body was moved or the tray was on her chest before or after, there were pieces that appeared to be pieces of pills strategically placed in the corners of Lynn Hernan's mouth. I think it's inescapable that they were placed there. None found in her mouth, but only in the corners. I somewhat agree with you that through the transport, through the EMS people being there, some of those things would have fallen.
And so I don't know if part of the pre-sentencing report, I don't know if she had any type of evaluation, but that wasn't made public. So her pre-sentencing report, to my knowledge, it was not made public. So we don't, I don't know that she has any diagnosis. So I don't know that, and then even if there was a diagnosis of, because I don't know if she would meet full criteria for antisocial personality disorder. I could see there possibly being some antisocial traits, but that seems to be tied to like greed, and there, I don't know, but um, let's keep going. We're almost there.
Fallen on the floor, would have been scattered in other ways, and that's very possible. I just don't think that would be responsible for those pieces in the corners of her mouth.
Yeah.
These were crimes over a significant period of time. These were crimes that required planning, preparation. Once Lynn Hernan was killed, the amount of deceit and deception really accelerated. We have these letters. Even if I take those off the table for a minute, we have everything that was done in that probate case. The false invoices, the loan against the inheritance and then using the estate funds to pay back. I mean, those were things that, from my perspective, were pretty easily proven. That paper trail. That was dismantled pretty quickly. And then we get to the point in time where police now, law enforcement are now zeroing in on you. We know in about March, when you met with Detective Cole and Detective Hoppy, that, and that really only happens after you make some phone calls and you're told the ME's office, they're not going to talk to you anymore. However, that kind of worked itself out, but we know they reached out to you because you called. There's a recording of your call seeking information from them. And that's kind of I think a pivotal point, because I think for you, you knew something was going on. They didn't tell you at that point. They don't tell you until July about the THZ. But that would have been a really good time if you had evidence that Lynn Herndon committed suicide, that you raise it, that you bring it forward. Or that if it did exist, you get it out of Whitnall Park, you put it in a safe deposit box, you put it in a storage, you put it someplace other than a park, if it truly existed. There were so many opportunities for that to be brought to police. And yet, and this is where your character comes into play, you want to turn the tables on law enforcement and say, you didn't do enough. You should have taken me out of custody. I should have had those 2 weeks to go search to find it myself. You didn't even have as much of a photograph on your cell phone to say, here's where it is. I kept a document. I kept a record of it just in case. Nothing.
It doesn't exist.
See, all things that I think, if this were legitimate, someone would have done or had. So fast forward to July of 2019. 6 different interviews, 6 different versions of events, and not one really making a whole lot of sense. You yourself admit, I lied. You should not be shocked, Ms. Kurczewski, that people don't believe the stories that you tell. They don't add up. They don't make sense. They fly in the face of logic. They are far too convenient, and most often have extra detail added after you're given information from law enforcement. As if you went back to your cell, how can I explain this away?
Yeah.
And I think you rely far too much on your intelligence and your ability to think on your feet, thinking you can outsmart law enforcement. And the thing is, they're going to look at everything. They're going to uncover everything that they can. You want everyone in this courtroom to believe you should not have been convicted because law enforcement didn't look into the death of Lynn's mom. They didn't need to. They had enough evidence. The evidence was clear. It pointed directly to you. But you had an opportunity, I think many times, to accept responsibility, to just admit
What you did.
And I don't think you're able to do that. You're going to stand firm on this was a suicide, and no one will convince you otherwise. But you know what you did. You know you're the one that took Lynn Herman from this earth. You know you're responsible because your own words say that to me. I knew she was drinking Visine. I helped her. I was filling up the bottles. I'm paraphrasing. I'm not going to get it exactly right. But your story morphed to the point you admitted you knew Lynn Herman was suicidal, that at one point she put a gun to her head, and that she had been drinking Visine for months. If that were true, and you love this woman with your heart and soul and cared about her well-being, I believe Lynn Herman would still be here because you would have gotten her help. You would have told her other friends and family that you may not have had a lot of contact with since you got out of prison or even ever, but you certainly knew about them. You had access to Lynn's phone. You would have reached out to everyone and anyone and said, this woman needs help. She's suicidal. But that's not what you did at all.
Try to fast forward a little.
Having made up my mind on what to do in your case. I'm going to tell you, I didn't. I would go back and forth. Should I give her life without the possibility of extended supervision? Should I give her this eligibility at some point in time? I made myself a sheet. I had blanks for those things. Now, I knew what I wanted to do on the theft charges. I'll give you that because those are pretty simple. They're 10-year felonies. Max is 5 years each, 5 initial confinement, 5 ES. And really the issue was, should they be consecutive or concurrent? And I'd go back and forth. I'd talk to my clerk. I'd say, I'm kind of struggling here. I want to find a reason. I listened to the state here today. They're pretty darn compelling as to why there's no redeeming qualities. And Attorney Jones said something really interesting during his sentencing remarks. You know, for everyone in this courtroom, the defendant, the defendant's family, to Mr. Posa, to his family, to all of Lynn's friends, even the detectives maybe, but probably less for them. This is the most important case. That's why you get people like Jim Kelleher saying, I want life without the possibility of parole, and you get a request for leniency from those on your side. That's very typical. But what he said, what Attorney Jones said, and what he talked about is we look at the system of justice. We have to look at the degrees of homicides. To look at the cases really based on my experience, right, and other homicide cases, what's come through this county, and just generally kind of what we know in the justice system. And that really kind of stuck with me. And he said to strip the defendant of any eligibility would be too harsh in this case. I'm paraphrasing. And that we should trust the system because it's not an automatic. All it is an eligibility. That made me think. I know you're roughly 40 years of age. I thought about making you eligible at 62 years, meaning 62 years of initial confinement. I thought, well, at 40, I don't know that, you know, I would put her into triple digits. And I thought about what others have said in terms of, you know, you're less of a risk when you get older, especially if you're in your 70s, 80s, whatever. And I don't want to unduly depreciate the seriousness of you taking the life of another person. And even though I think you're completely diabolical, and I think this was planned, and I think you have evil in your heart, when I look at what else I've seen through my tenure, when I think of the system as a whole, I think this is one of those cases that it would not unduly depreciate the seriousness of the offense to make you eligible for extended supervision at some point. So then the question,
So the judge was nice. The judge is, so she's talking through her thought process. And I think she's really making sure, like people are saying in the chat, that this can't be overturned on appeal. And so the judge is going to make her eligible for parole at some point, but that eligibility is going to be based on her behavior. Her parole board, like people meet to determine, are you still a huge risk? So if she was in jail still, like if they found out she was scamming people, or I don't know, like if there were signs that she hadn't changed, she could be eligible and parole could be denied. Because I do believe she does have a life sentence, but she's going to get eligibility at some point. So the judge is going through that right now.
becomes at what point? I think for me, it's important to think about how old Lynn was when her life was cut short, and she was 62. Under the statute, the earliest I could consider eligibility is 20 years. Now, this is not what I would call minimums eligibility case. You have a prior record for 4 felonies. You've been to prison previously. You've been revoked twice while on extended supervision. You have issues with conformity.
Yay! Congratulations. Congratulations, Jenny Wren, on being accepted to a clinical and forensic psychology degree. That is super cool because so in my state, you get licensed as a clinical psychologist and then you do additional training on postdoc. And so you'll have the forensic classes and all of that. And then you'll probably get a forensic internship and postdoc. And then you do your additional training to become a forensic psychologist. That is super cool. Thank you for being here. Share any things that you learn along the way. Like that is super cool. I took some forensic classes, but forensic wasn't what I wanted to do personally. I've talked about some of my thoughts on other things, and I think it's a phenomenal. So I wouldn't want to be the one to decide whether somebody was competent or not. So forensic psychologists have to make decisions that I wouldn't want to make. I have a very client-centered approach and I want to believe what people are telling me. And a forensic psychologist has to be very neutral and you have to be open, really looking for the idea of, is this person lying and do they meet the law? There are some forensic psychologists that also get law degrees or like they take law classes as well, because having a foundation in law can be really helpful. But that's my squirrel moment for the day, or one of many, I'm sure, but we'll just count that number 1. It's probably 12, but okay.
Conforming your conduct to the rules and expectations that are placed upon you by the justice system. However, it's your first violent offense. You don't have a history of harming people, physically, assault behavior, certainly not a prior homicide. Not even like an OWI homicide or anything. You just have that prior OWI first. Knowing that I believe consecutive sentences for those thefts are important, and I'll get to the reasoning why. On the first-degree intentional homicide charge, count 1, I'm going to impose a life sentence with the possibility of extended supervision after 30 years. That would make you, without the theft charges, close to 70 years of age, older than what Lynn would be today. Physically older. I think 30 years is a pretty significant amount of time.
I want to answer a question. So, Muzzy Bear, I believe the judge was saying prior to this crime, so that the other felonies were all nonviolent. This is her first violent crime. I believe that's what the judge is saying here.
But my target is really 80 for you. That is why on counts 2 and 3, you're going to serve maximum sentences consecutive to count 1 and consecutive to each other. Because I think to do anything other than that, given your prior forgery and misappropriation, felony convictions, and your lack of a good track record while on extended supervision, would be to unduly depreciate the seriousness of those offenses. But I really looked at this, and my goal here was to kind of hit that target. And that's how I structured it. And that target being to make you eligible closer to a point in time when you are 80 years of age. I think the criteria that I have when I think about not just the seriousness of the offense, but the need to protect the public, that's one of the key factors here as well. You've demonstrated that not only for family members and people that you love, but other strangers, like your prior record shows with the patients from the clinic at which you worked and the mom of the person you lived with, there's really not anyone who's safe from you when it comes to your willingness to steal.
Sorry. Oh, why do I keep doing that? There is no one who's safe from you when it comes to your willingness to steal. There is no one that is safe from you when it comes to your willingness to steal. I was trying to pause and I did the other things wrong. And so I apologize as we find our place.
Who should not be shocked, Ms. Kurczewski, that people don't believe the stories that you tell.
I think we went backwards.
They don't overlook anything. I wanted to address
Hold on.
evil in your heart.
I think further. Sorry.
Conduct to the rules and expectations that are placed upon you by the justice system. However, it's your first violent offense.
Okay, can I go
You
forward?
don't have a history of and misappropriation, felony convictions, and your lack of a good track record while on extended supervision would be to unduly depreciate the seriousness of those offenses. But I really looked at this, and my goal here was to kind of hit that target. And that's how I structured it. And that target being to make you eligible
Trying to go a little
closer
further.
the conditions of your sentence. Obviously, there's some things I need to go through the statute, but I'll go through them. You have to provide a DNA sample. If you've not previously done so, there's DNA surcharges on all 3 counts, $250 each. There's payment of court costs for each count. I am going to order costs pursuant to 973.06 sub 1 sub B in the amount of $16,728.74 payable to the Waukesha County District Attorney's Office for the expert witness who testified in this case. I'll go through restitution more specifically in a moment, and I realize it will be subject to a request for a hearing if made at the end of this hearing. But I do believe restitution as set forth in the memorandum and affidavit submitted by, I take that back. I don't think it was signed as an affidavit, but there's a memorandum and supporting documentation from attorney Beth Taylor detailing $386,646.01 is appropriate for all of the reasons that are expressed in that memorandum. I'll frankly take judicial notice. She'll be incarcerated for quite a period of time and will not be employed. I don't think that's disputed, but I also believe it's appropriate for this court to set up an escrow account under 949.165 It is the express intent of this court to limit, if not make impossible, the ability of the defendant to profit in any way from the crimes she has been convicted of in this case, and to use monies received as a result of the commission of these crimes, whether past, present, or future, to pay restitution as ordered herein, and to compensate the victims. In other words, this court is relying upon Wisconsin's state statute section 949.165 to order the establishment of an escrow account as a legal means to ensure the victims are compensated from the fruits of these serious crimes. The court finds an order for an escrow account is appropriate under the statute for payment of restitution, as well as court costs, fees, and surcharges, and for costs associated with prior or future legal representation, et cetera, under the statute. That's not an exhaustive list. The statute's pretty clear on what is may be paid. There is no doubt in the court's mind that homicide and felony theft are serious crimes under sub 1 in 949.165, and that the estate of Lynn Hernan, represented by the personal representative Anthony Poza, are victims under 950.02 sub 4. Not only is restitution to be paid as any condition of her sentence and extended supervision, but it's to be paid before costs or fines. And these financial obligations shall be collected pursuant to state statute and as provided with that escrow account that I'm setting up as well. She's to have absolutely no contact with Anthony Poza or any family members of his. She's to not gamble.
She
or
didn't
have
like
any contact at any casino. She's not to possess another person's personal identifying information.
I like that this judge is doing all of this. Welcome. So escrow account is just like a legal, so I'm not a lawyer, I'm a psychologist. So like when I buy a house, the bank puts the money in so like, cause the bank pays the seller of the house the full amount, but they never give the money to me. So it's like a legal thing to make sure that the money is protected. So if she gets any money, she won't be able to touch it. It will go to that account first, which will pay restitution. And so she has to pay almost $400,000 of restitution before she could make any personal money. Sometimes they give like where they can have commissary, or sometimes it depends on the state. Sometimes there are where they allow them to have some money, but if she were to come into maybe an inheritance or something, that would go into that escrow account, and victims would have to be paid out of that. So Jessy says that Lynn gave her all of that money, and everybody says that that was not Lynn, that was not accurate, that did not happen. And so that's why Jessy looks so upset. I didn't realize that the judge restricted her contact with Anthony as well. And I'm glad that the judge did that. And I paused it right as the judge is making sure she does not have access to people's social security numbers or their personal identifying information.
Information, including but not limited to a driver's license, social security number or card, credit card or number, etc. She is to have no employment or service as a caregiver, whether paid or unpaid. She's to complete all other programming as deemed appropriate by the Department of Corrections. Within 48 hours of this hearing, she is to notify her attorney, meaning Attorney Jones, of the location of Lynn Herman's remains. And within 48 hours of that notification, those remains are to be turned over to the state of Wisconsin via their victim witness, who shall then turn them over to Anthony Poza.
She probably doesn't like Anthony being turned into the victim as well. Like, so Lynn did not have any children. Lynn, it's my understanding, everything y'all said, she was the only child. Anthony was like a son to her, but he's a very close friend. So my best friend, I consider her children to be my nieces and nephew. They're not biologically mine, but it's like kinship. Like we're not actually family, but like we're really close. So it's that type of situation. It's not her biological nephew, but she looked at him like a nephew. And he's the beneficiary of her estate, which made Jessy really mad. And she tried to become she tried to change her will. That's the allegation. That's what she's been found guilty of. But that did not go through because she signed as a witness for the change in the will. And I didn't know it, but it makes sense. To make a will legit, there has to be neutral. There has to be neutral people there to sign. A beneficiary can't be one of the witnesses signing it. I didn't know that.
Just want to look through my notes, make sure I didn't overlook anything I wanted to address here today.
I like family.
I wanted to say this as well to,
Judge, I can provide that location now if the court wants.
please do so on the record.
Yes, my client's indicated that her mother's in possession of those remains.
Oh, the ashes.
Do we know if Jennifer Flowers in the hallway?
So the mom left. Wow. So while the judge was doing the sentencing, I guess mom left at some point. I'm not surprised.
We'll check. She's to be brought in. I want to order her to turn them over. If the state would like a written order, please submit.
The other thing I like is chosen family, so that you have your like biological or birth family. Some people are adopted and have adoptive family, and then chosen family. I think chosen family is that's what I say as well.
Submit one, and I'll order that Jennifer Flower, who is in possession of the remains of Lynn Hernan, turn those over to the Waukesha County District Attorney's Office. Would you be willing to serve that upon her, Attorney Nicolai, within 48 hours of being served with the court order? All right, thank you. I wanted to say a couple of acknowledgements to Mr. Posa, his mom, and the rest of Lynn's friends. And I know that at times this has been frustrating. I appreciate the sentiment here earlier today, but I hope I did my best to bring this case to a conclusion, and that through this case, this trial, and today, that you can finally have some closure and begin healing. I know that it's frustrating. It's frustrating for a lot of people, whether it be a defendant or a victim, to go through a court process. It doesn't always go as quickly. And as one thing I will agree with the defendant is that it is going through a court case and a trial is nothing like what you see portrayed in a dramatization. I often tell juries that you cannot try a case and get a verdict in an hour. That's drama. And the rules of evidence oftentimes prevent certain things from coming in that one party or the other might want in. And the flip side of that is sometimes it allows for questioning that may seem intrusive and violative. And I appreciate everyone's patience. As we went through this process, I would remind everyone, the case was filed in 2021. There needed to be a preliminary hearing. That was ultimately, once we got through the arraignment process and the case came before me, we had a trial scheduled in relatively short order for February of 2023. And then there was a request by the defense for an adjournment. And with reluctance, I granted that. And originally we had parts of 6 weeks needed to be scheduled depending on how we started and whatnot. And you can't just find 5 weeks, 6 weeks on anyone's schedule without going out a significant amount of time. And, you know, we don't have attorneys Kukler and Galaviz here, but, you know, from my perspective, everyone worked really diligently to find a time that worked, that where we could put this case forward. We had certainly a jury pool who are silent other than the written verdicts that they signed. And I hope in some respects I've given voice in recognition of the guilty verdicts that they pronounced in this case. I found my note that I wanted to reference earlier, and I know I've pronounced sentence, but when I talked about THZ and what it does to a person and why I believe in the series of events that I've described and how it was utilized in this case and why I believe there's, you know, evidence to support it being used for quite some time, is that it impairs memory, it impairs judgment, it impairs inhibitions. It's a substance not routinely screened for, and certainly not in 2018. It's widely available over the counter. It's not a recreational drug. It's used, as I indicated, either maliciously or as intended, or it's ingested accidentally. That as a CNS depressant.
Is that why people think he was setting up dinner plans? Do we know that for sure? But this was really long. Like everybody talked. Like this was so long. Like this was really, really long. Okay. And I meant to play parts of this, but it didn't sound right on the increased speed. I don't know what he's doing on his phone. If I was in his shoes, I'd be on my phone for a second. But we'll see.
It can cause depression, drowsiness, hypothermia, which is low body temp, bradycardia, which is slow heart rate, hypotension, apnea, which is the temporary cessation in breathing, and coma. I didn't say this previously, but I had written a note to myself. I think it was referenced either by the state or by perhaps one of the individuals who made a statement. I think it was Attorney Sitzberger. You know, Lynn Herndon was left to die on her own. What I wrote is this, that she was dosed and the defendant left her to die alone. Why leave? If not a homicide, you needed a window of opportunity to claim Lynn Herndon committed suicide. I just want to make a further record that while I didn't reference it with specificity in my sentencing remarks, I obviously had referenced kind of generally the PSI, the private PSI certainly relied upon those in getting background information for Ms. Kurczewski. My reference to the 20 years was obviously to the private PSI as well. The state's PSI did not make any specific recommendation on the homicide other than noting it's life. That's mandatory life under the statute, and then made a recommendation that I deviated from, or at least did not agree with, as to counts 2 and 3. I do want to state with some specificity the restitution that I ordered. I gave the total amount, but it's broken down as follows. For funeral expenses, $3,707.48. For the personal representative's fee, $2,947. For the cash withdrawals and checks from the estate checking account, $54,689.53. For payment from the estate to inheritance funding, $14,000. The payment from Croak, Gonzalez, Eckerly, and Martinson in the amount of $4,700. Additional fraudulent estate expenses as detailed in the memorandum by Attorney Taylor, totaling $42,425.14. Attorney's fees incurred by the state. This includes actual attorney's fees that have been incurred and an estimate of future attorney's fees, which I find to be reasonable under the circumstances, of $18,149. I agree with the reasoning in this memorandum that this is not, this is different from normal attorney's fees. These are fees that would not have been incurred but for their fraudulent activity related to the probate case of the defendant or by the defendant.
To me, she was way too patient with Daryl Brooks, and he pushed, like, to me, I think he felt like he was in control, and I think he pushed things a lot. And because he kind of wanted to be the victim and he wanted to get kicked out sometimes. And to me, she was way too nice with him. I'm not a judge, not a lawyer, just it was very painful to watch.
Mr. Posa, as the personal representative and victim under the statute, he may seek and has sought compensation for time away from work totaling $1,680. And there's additional payments to the defendant from the BMO Harris account totaling $244,347.86 for that total of $386,646 and a penny. I'll find that this total amount of restitution has been established by clear and convincing evidence based upon the trial exhibits and testimony, and as set forth in the attached supporting documentation in document number 616 filed with this court. Now, I indicated earlier, Attorney Jones, that I would certainly, if requested, schedule it further for a restitution hearing.
All right. So we are done with that part. I didn't play the part. So like the two of them, it sounds like she does like him. Like they were like joking and kind of laughing. There is no sound for this part, I don't believe. And so so this was before sentencing. So this was after she had made her statement and they're waiting for the judge to come back. Like the two of them are just kind of sitting talking, but there were times that she just seemed very casual. That changed very, like, I'd never seen her laugh before. Like, I think I don't know, like, I hadn't seen that side of her before, and I had never seen her look at an attorney that way. I usually saw her like glaring at her attorneys, and so I do think that she was happy with this particular attorney, and he might be the one that does appeals for her as well. And so, but she was very different. Come at the end of this hearing, she was very different. And so, yes, if y'all have questions, let me know. I started a comment. Thank you to all the super chats and to all the new members. I appreciate it. This video will likely get demonetized because of the unalive word was probably said way too many times. The YouTube algorithm, it'll take them a minute, but after, like, they'll probably, but it's fine. So I do this to share this education, and I really do this to just share with you all. And so, like, it is what it is. I knew playing that if I didn't record it before, or like if I didn't edit it after the fact, that it was probably going to get flagged, which is fine. I prefer to do these live with you all because I get to answer your questions as we're going. And so, to my knowledge, I don't believe that they did have a trail of any Visine purchases. I think she was searching for poisons, so they do have that. She had a PDF. She had like 2 or 3 PDFs on her phone that she attempted to delete. And it was about, like, not how to get away with murder, but kind of like she had some sketchy PDFs on her phone. And once they did request, because the initial panel that the medical examiner and the hospital, so Lynn was hospitalized 4 days before her death, and in the hospital never tested for the chemical that's in Visine. They never tested it. And that's where the judge said, I think that's when you kind of got the idea that you could probably get away with it. And because Lynn got better when she was in the hospital because she was no longer being poisoned. Like that's what the state said. That's what the judge kind of felt the evidence pointed in that direction as well. I had no clue that that Judge Joro had experience as a defense attorney and a prosecutor. I think that gives her a unique perspective of seeing things from both sides. And I really just appreciated her breakdown. Sometimes when people use too many words to explain something, like my brain kind of like trails off and like I have to pay attention, Patrice, pay attention. But everything she said was amazing. It was painful to listen to Jesse's mom and then also Jesse speak because once again they tried to make themselves be the victims and this was supposed to be about Lynn. This should have focused on her and Jesse should have focused on like I don't know, even if she was going to say, I'm innocent, I didn't do it, I'm a good person, here's my character, like, I don't know, like, she didn't say anything about why she didn't deserve life in prison because she really focused more on why she shouldn't have been found guilty. Like, that's what she focused on. But you've already been found guilty. This isn't your appeal. This is your sentencing. And that's what's going to happen today. And it is what it is. Oy. Sarah, have a good day. Um, yes, Daryl Books took advantage as much as he could. Whoa, okay, that makes sense. That she admitted to buying Visine for Len. So I did not watch every second of this trial. These are my love earrings, and the O is Africa. I absolutely adore them. Yes, yes, yes. I sometimes wear. I did get some personal psych nerd earrings. So I do have the shirt. If like if people want the merch, you don't have to, but it is available. Um, all right. Any last minute questions? You have like a minute because I'm gonna go like use the bathroom. Like y'all, make sure you drank your water and you took some breaths. I really appreciated the judge for saying all that she said, for really putting a bow on all of this because to me, I think I don't know, like, and the whole fact that Jesse's mom did not speak to her daughter's character, I thought that was kind of a red flag. But I think she was so mad that her daughter was found guilty and was so mad that like she was even facing sentencing. But I think that blinded her to how she could actually help her daughter. Really. And so, oh my gosh, Dominique, if what? Wow. Wow. I'm so glad. Yes. And so Tuesday, we're going to cover most likely. So Tuesday, I normally go live. Sorry to my so if you have to watch on replay, please watch on replay. But I normally go live about 6 p.m. Eastern, which I think is midnight over in the UK. The UK is my second largest audience. So US is my first largest, and then UK is my second largest. If you like the video, make sure to hit that like button. If you haven't subscribed and you like this kind of content, make sure to do that. I hope you all enjoy the rest of your day.